Going again, and we're on to item 8, the passenger rail business case update. Chris is giving that, and the recommendations are on page 57. There, thanks Chris, and Jose from the Regional Council as well, who's been very patiently sitting there for a while. Chris has forgotten something and he's off to get it. I told you the story you had to give. Okay, we're on to it. Chris.
Yes, so councillors, the report is on page 57. Can I just introduce Jose Gonzalez? So Jose works for Waikato Regional Council. So he's been doing a lot of the work with me and others on the business case, so in particularly in regard to passenger demand survey and the detailed business case. So if you can believe it, Jose's probably gets even more detailed than me when he answers questions, so I'll try and control him and Dave will control both of us.
As long as Blair's not part of it, we should be right.
Okay, so what you have in front of you, councillors, is an update on where the work is with the passenger rail. So I think Parakāwhia gave you an update this morning of where Waikato Regional Council are in their deliberations. So a bigger part of the local government input into the service rests with Waikato Regional Council in terms of the operational cost and rolling stock. So Regional Council approved this morning putting the funding provision into their 10-year plan, subject to a number of matters. So one of those is that the detailed business case, when it's finished later on in the year, it comes back to them for approval. So it's a funding provision they've made, subject to the detailed business case coming back and being approved. They've made it very clear in there that it's the funding provision is subject to some really elevated funding provisions from central government, and Parakāwhia mentioned those. It was 75% central government pay for the operating costs, which is a lot higher than what would normally happen, and that they also pay 100% of the capital cost. So in this case, in the Regional Council context, capital cost is the cost of the rolling stock, so the locomotives and the carriages and the upgrade of the carriages. So that was a big issue for Regional Council, that they didn't want to be an owner of rolling stock and that it should be paid for by central government. So that was a really clear tag from Regional Council. Also in that tag is 100% of the, I call it underground costs. So if there's any track work to do on the rail and signals on the rail, a realignment of rail, the business case will be predicated on 100% of that cost goes to central government through KiwiRail or New Zealand Transport Agency and not on local government. So the last condition that Regional Council made is that their funding provision is subject to Hamilton and Waikato District Council making appropriate provisions in our respective 10-year plans for our part of this proposal. So for us, our part of this proposal is limited to sort of above ground infrastructure work. So for us, it's the Rotokauri rail station, the proposed rail station. So we have made. So the report is on page 57. If you. Yeah. So our funding provisions are on page 63 in the table. So today, just to reinforce, today is just about receiving the report and making sure that you understand where we've got to with the business case. And the second recommendation is to come back once the detailed business case has been finalised, and just before when the Transport Agency will make its decision on its share of cost. So your debate is probably will be tomorrow as you look at your 10-year plan and what projects you keep in there. So one of those projects are projects that allow the infrastructure for the rail platform to be implemented as per that table on page 47. So just to restate this is, we thought it just entirely appropriate to bring back quite a detailed update of where we've got to in the business case. So just the last thing I'd probably like to say is probably responding to anticipating some of Councillor Mallett's questions from this morning to the NZTA. So absolutely, Councillor Mallett, all of the information that and the questions you were asking are an integral part of the detailed business case. That's what the detailed business case is all about, is understanding the benefits of the rail system, and that includes things like the traffic on the road and the patronage we're going to get, etc. So that will form part of the detailed business case, and it will be in there. The business case has not been completed yet, and so that's why it's one of the conditions of putting the funding provision in, that the detailed business case comes back for approval. So I would just make the point, though, that in terms of the benefits of a rail, we're following more or less a standard procedure from NZTA and how you determine the benefits of a public transport system. So a part of it might be the issues you were hunting down, but there are other big parts to the benefit cost system as well. So not just about relieving congestion. So I think it's important for us to look at this project through the lens of the government policy. So what we are doing is we're responding to a government policy, which is to implement regional rail. That's their clear policy. They've put out a government policy statement because they had to do it quickly. That creates a transitional rail class over the next 5 years. So initiatives like this can get off the ground. They have signalled, and you heard Parakāwhia say that today, they intend to do a much bigger review of their government policy statement by the end of 2019, which will be informed by a major review of rail that they're undertaking. So they're signalling a clear policy shift to rail, both freight and passenger service. And they've signalled that very clearly by making a funding provision to get trial services like this up and running. So I think I'll leave it at there, and together we'll just respond to any questions you might have.
Okay. Oops, I'm on the wrong screen. We've got Angela. We've got a whole stack. Yep, Angela first. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks for the report. I'll be cheeky here and say that I think that the central government is responding to this council's strategic direction over at least a decade and about passenger rail, but I'm very happy with that. Were you aware of that? No. Had to say that. Just need to clarify who owns what, etc. So Parakāwhia said this morning...
Sorry, Angela, just not directed totally at you, but can councillors please refer to the paragraph number and page, preferably when they have a specific question? I think yours may be general.
Yep, no. On page 58, then point 10, it says HCC will have to fund the establishment of the rail platform. So I think I got that clearly, and you've just articulated it, that the 100% capital costs are for the carriages. What's the difference between carriages and rolling stock?
So the rolling stock includes the carriages and the locomotives. Okay. So the engine that pulls it plus the carriages is what we would loosely call the rolling stock.
And then the government would pay for any upgrades. You talk about what the service would need in terms of Wi-Fi, cafe and things like that?
Yeah, so part of the business case we've been doing is working through the refurbishment of these carriages to provide the best level of service for commuters, and that includes looking at Wi-Fi, looking at the seats, looking at wheelchair access, disabled toilets, etc.
You have to have all of that for it
You've
to
got to
be
have
successful.
And the focus has been on a really good level of service, so customers are attracted to stay and keep using it.
So the rail platform is currently owned by Kiwi Rail, though, is that correct?
So at Rotokauri there is no rail platform at the moment. Frankton, I think the rail station is an asset of Kiwi Rail and not City Council. But sort of moving forward, it's normal for, in the public transport space, for councils to provide that infrastructure. So that's why it's emerging that below ground would be an asset of Kiwi Rail and why they should pay for it if they're doing track work and signalling work. But above ground, in terms of the platform and a shelter and the lights, would be the responsibility of council.
So responsibility, it's not, the asset won't ever get transferred into Hamilton City?
I expect it would be our asset with a licence to occupy in the rail corridor or some sort of arrangement like that.
Okay,
But sorry, was that, just to clarify that, the Frankton one would remain with Kiwi Rail, and the Rotokari one, the new one, would be ours?
That's my expectation. So it's not my understanding that we're an asset owner of the Frankton railway station. I'm pretty sure we're not. But moving forward, they made it clear that they'd like local government, and I think that's the same in Auckland, Jose?
Yeah, so if I may, Mr. Chair, so in Auckland and the Wellington Metro networks as well, all this sort of above platform and above infrastructure, it's taken care by its own council, and the appropriate investment and local share contributions are made accordingly. And the funding assistance rate that they're actually given, it's currently most of them they do get a special appropriation, so a lot of them they do get roughly, even above 80 or 90%, you will call it funding assistance rate. However, that's not the source of funding they currently get. So this is what kind of pioneering with NCTA in terms of asking for enhanced funding assistance rate. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. And Chris, you just mentioned, so this isn't on a page, but you just mentioned that NZTA will work out its share in terms of, I think you were talking about the cost of service, what subsidies. So they're putting in 75% subsidy for the service, is that right?
So the business case is built on, we've identified the operational costs, so that'll be paid for by fares. So there's a proportion that'll be paid for by fares. Then the balance will be split between funding from regional council, which I'll get from rating for public transport, and the balance from the subsidy from NZTA. So to make it work for regional council, they approached it more from an affordability point of view, what's an appropriate amount to rate for this, and the balance needs to come from central government, and that works out to at least 75%.
So the system, I'm on page 61 here, under 33, the system of the Waikato Regional Council being the operator of the service and Hamilton City Council responsible for platform is a similar structure to what we have with the bus services now, where we own the infrastructure, or in this case we will manage the Frankton station and they provide the service.
Correct. The subtlety here, as I would say, is that regional council in Waikato probably don't have the capacity or capability to run rail services, so the discussions are around them contracting Auckland Transport, who have got those skills to do that on regional council's behalf, and that ensures integration with all of the timetabling and all of the access to the metro markets as well. But the reality is that Waikato Regional Council would be responsible for operation, very, as you said, similar to the bus system as well.
Okay.
If I may add on to what Chris said, Auckland Transport is currently drafting a proposal for the Waikato Regional Council to look at in terms of becoming an agent, sort of client contract agent. So we'll be client contract managing, but they will be the agent for the service. So they will be ensuring that all contractual responsibilities are being met by QRL being the operator of the service. Yeah.
And finally, on page 63, under 47, you've got some funding provision there. So this is HCC funding provision, correct, in our LTP, so still to be signed off?
Correct. So what you're looking at is gross figures there that include an assumed 51% subsidy. So that is what you would see in our 10-year plan. Some of them, I've put in the shaded rows there, because some of them are projects within programs to say what the dedicated funding is for that particular item.
And is the 6.7 million in 2018-19, is that the
So
land purchase?
Yeah, so the 6.7 in 18-19, about 5.7 of that I think is to complete the land purchase.
Yeah.
So we paid a deposit this year,
6.8.
and it's about 5.7, 5.8 is the balance of the payment that's due, and then some of it is for the rail program and some of it is for other mass transit items that are in the Access Hamilton program.
So far, Chris, in that table, estimated costs for HCC's contribution over the next 4 years, you're estimating that to be 6 million in total. So is that right? And does that take into account the revenue from the service and things like that? Is that what I'm looking at?
So what that table is saying is if you look down to the bottom right-hand corner, you see the 6,059,000.
Yep.
So that's the budget that we have in our plan to do park and ride and the rail platform. So on top of that is the land cost. So that's just the budget we have to do the park and ride and the rail platform. If you go 2 rows up and you see the figure of, sorry, let me just get that one.
3, 4.
Sorry, so that table is about the budget. If you go down to the next table under paragraph 48, that's my estimate of how much of that 6 million we would need to do this interim proposal, which is roughly 3.3 million. So the balance between the budget and those costs are largely to complete the park and ride. So what we're proposing in the first instance is just to build part of the park and ride that's an appropriate size for a start-up service. So the balance of cost in our 4 years would be to develop the park and ride to its full potential if that was required.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, just one point, Chris, of clarification. Included in this, which is not pulled apart enough perhaps, is the bus interchange. There's going to be bus area there as well, so that's part of this cost somehow, isn't it?
Yeah, so a point that we're making is the purchase of the land for park and ride. It's got a purpose beyond rail, so we envisage we would have a public transport hub there in the fullness of time, which would be where buses would congregate and circulate, and hopefully we can integrate rail with it. But the purpose of the park and ride is associated with a public transport hub, which is buses and rail.
I mean, we're talking to the regional council about at least the orbiter going in, being available from day one to connect with the service at that point, physically at that point.
Yep, and the balance, the difference between the budget and the cost for the rail is the funding that we would use probably to work with regional council to enhance the park and ride and put a bus hub in that land.
Yep. Yeah, sure.
Request the next time these reports come, if we can have clearer financial budget to keep an eye on it, because with the government actually contributing 100% to the capital cost, that's a huge impact, and also helps combat the story out there that's happening with the public at the moment, which is, we can't afford to be doing this. So I think clearer and more transparent of the entire project and those costs that you just indicated, Chair, would be really helpful.
Yeah, I think just maybe draw your attention, good point, Angela, to the maps on page 72 and 73 show basically show the one on 72 shows the startup, the one on 73 shows the long term, but it shows the platform in yellow and the track rework that Kiwi Rail would, or the government would do for Kiwi Rail, and shows the park and ride area and what it might eventually become, just to sort of orient those discussions as well. Sorry, we've got a question. Is that all, Angela? Sorry? Yes, thanks. James, thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chris, for the report. I've got a few questions because I've got some real concerns here about this being viable and sustainable. Can you give us a rough ballpark figure as to how much each trip will be subsidised by Hamilton ratepayers? Do we know roughly by now?
Are you just working this out now?
Yeah, I mean, I have it in a report, but I don't know the figure by heart, but I know it's between $40 to $50. That's a subsidy per passenger. Right.
Ooh, okay.
Sorry, I don't think those figures are accurate because the total amount collected from, there's going to be 140,000 trips a year, according to the figures in the report here, 280 times each, backwards and forwards, that's twice a day times 5, not the weekends are rats and mice, I wasn't even counting them, divided into the amount that's going to be collected from the regional PT rate, which is only just over $10 a trip when you actually look at those figures.
Yeah, no, you're right. I was just talking about the subsidy, including local share and central government.
Subsidy as well,
both.
but the Hamilton ratepayers was James's question. I don't know what your budget is, but I think it's about $1.5 million that they're going to collect from the regional operational subsidy, and you're dividing the number of passengers into that is just over $10, I think, per trip.
Okay. Page 59 here, 18 bullet point 2. It said 61% of people travelling at least once a month are willing to consider. So are we looking at numbers that we a lot less than that actually travelling, if they're only willing to consider at this stage?
Figures are actually in the report, James, at 280 per direction per day.
We're hoping, yeah.
No, that's what the passenger survey has said. That's what's written in here.
Page 60, point 22, Fonterra executed their own internal staff survey. It's got me confused because it said 80% responded that they would depart from Hamilton if the service was run, given that they are taking almost 3 hours to complete a one-way peak time car journey to Auckland. It kind of reads that way to me, that these people that Fonterra employ actually live in Auckland. Is that correct?
No, my understanding, this is of the Fonterra employees who live in Hamilton. And so this is just replicating the information that they submitted to both Waikato Regional Council and ourselves in the 10-year plan. So this is the information that is contained in their submission.
Sorry, yeah, the fact they say they will depart from Hamilton is because they were given the service details, so they know that Hamilton will be the departing point for the service. They could be living in the Waikato wider area, Waipa, or even other locations, not necessarily just in Hamilton.
Okay. All right, so the Hamilton ratepayer will be subsidising those people as well?
Yes, that's correct.
And just one other thing here on page 62.41, the bullet points there, the 60-metre island platform, the shelter, the crossing and the 100 car parks. Is this likely to be funded by central government? Because I notice in Phil Cellphone Twyford's report here on page 66 that he signals this government has strong support for investment in inter-regional commuter services. So if they're that strongly in support of it, wouldn't they fund that?
Yep, so that's the discussion that we've just had, where that would be a subsidisable project. So of the table that we were just looking at on the other page, the $3.3 million, would attract at least a 51% subsidy on that. And we'd be looking in the business case to see whether we can get a higher subsidy rate, but the normal subsidy rate is 51%. So so that work, that 3.3 million, provides the 60-metre island platform, it provides the shelter, ticketing, lighting, provides the crossings, and it provides the car parks.
Just to elaborate on that, the Waikato Regional Council were also seeking an enhanced fare rate through the public transport activity class for the provision of the service, which aligns well with Hamilton City need of funding for the capital investment in the railway stations. They're both going to be coming from the same bucket, and that's the indication that we've been given by NZTA.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sorry, James, it's all finished. Sorry, Gary, thanks.
Thanks very much. Page 63, those two boxes. Am I right in saying the top box, Chris, which is paragraph 47, I think, includes all the bottom box?
So the top box in paragraph 47 is the budget provision that we've made in the 10-year plan.
Yep.
The bottom box is our estimate of costs associated with the startup rail service. So if you look at the bottom right-hand boxes there, the shaded one, 6 million. So we've got 6 million provision in our 10-year plan.
Yep.
To do the startup rail platform, we
Which is
require
part
3
of
point,
the
which is part
6.3,
of the
yep.
6.3, the 6.059.
So it would be wrong to add those two together.
It'd be very wrong to add those two together, yep.
Thank you. Sorry, I forgot your name. What's your name?
Jose.
Jose. That's with a J? Yeah, with a J. Can't you sort that out? You talked at someone being an agent of some sort early on. Well, I didn't understand a word of what you said then. So can you just?
Right. So what the intention of the Waikato Regional Council is that we do not want to be the client contract manager of the service because
Client. What does that mean?
the client contract manager is essentially the person that will sign the contract with the operator, just how we do with our bus services in Hamilton and in the satellite services as well to the wider districts.
So I understand the bus model. So what we don't want.
We do not want to implement
We,
the
as in
same.
Waikato Regional Council,
sorry.
okay.
Waikato Regional Council do not want to implement the same model that we
You
use
don't
for
want to be
public
like
transport.
that, okay.
Yeah, we don't want to
They
be
want
like
to
that.
subcontract to Auckland Transport.
Yeah, to Auckland Transport. Yeah.
So Gary, let me help with that. So
Yeah.
if this service is to be successful, it needs to work really well with the Auckland Metro. So when they're around the table talking about timetabling and issues on the network, you need to be at the table.
Gotcha.
Now, Waikato Regional Council are in Hamilton and they can't be at the table. So the proposal is Regional Council here would be responsible, but they have an agreement with Auckland Transport that they do it on Regional Council's behalf. So it's very sensible then because we're just integrated with
Because the
the
guys in
Auckland
Auckland
network.
will know when they want people arriving from Hamilton, they will know. Is that what we're talking
all
about?
of those
All that
types
sort
of
stuff.
things, yeah.
Okay.
So what the biggest issue is they have a timetable committee that's continuously looking at access to the rail network and what slots you can get. So if we don't have a seat around that table, it could be a poor outcome for this service. So it's eminently sensible that we contract Auckland Transport to love and care for the service in the Auckland network.
So crudely speaking, the Auckland Regional, who are they?
Auckland Transport.
Auckland Transport would be the Waikato Regional Council in
They'll
in our bus
represent.
thing.
They'll
Okay.
represent us. Yeah. So the responsibility will still sit with Waikato Regional
Okay.
Council, but they'll have a contract with Auckland Transport, I imagine, that says, here's what we want the service to do. We want it to go at these times. We want this level of service. Please go and provide it.
There's going to be a conflict there somewhere. Well, there's likely to be a conflict there somewhere because we're going to be wanting our people to sort of get on the train at 6:30 and 7:30 or something like that, reasonable hours, wanting to arrive in Auckland 2 hours after that, or 90 minutes, or Papakura 90 minutes after that. Whereas that may not gel. I can understand what you're saying. So they will, yeah.
Yep, no, you're absolutely right, and that is the challenging part of it, but it's manageable if Auckland Council do that for us. And look, the whole rail network's going to be dynamic over the few years as improvements are made in sort of electrification and extra lines in the metro system. So the whole timetable will be moving around. So it's always been there with a seat around the table to get the best outcome for our service.
Okay. Now, your demand work with your how many passengers, it probably won't be a problem if there's only 280 people. There's 280 people as a spit in the bucket for what goes through up in Auckland. I mean, that's really low numbers, isn't it?
Yeah, the numbers are what they are. We would hope, and while it's a trial, that you'd grow patronage over time. So those numbers, they're such that the Auckland Metro can handle those numbers. So that would be 2 services. So let's say 140 for each train service arriving. So we'd match the service the number of carriages to the patronage demand.
We've done this before. I don't know if we've done it. I certainly know we've done it once before. I don't know if we've done it twice before. But did we find in previous times? Does anyone know what the numbers were then?
Yeah, look, that's
I
before
appreciate Hamilton's a little bit bigger than it was then,
Yeah,
but it was only 6 or 8 years ago.
Yeah, it must have been more than 10 years ago, because it was before my time in council, and I've been here 10 now.
I think it stopped in 2003, Gary, the one that they did run thereabouts anyway.
And it's only been done once, is that right?
You used to be able to take the Northerner every day between, I don't know what time that was.
So that was the Silverfern service, and it produced patronage between 50 and 70, or roughly there one way.
Was happening back
In
then?
2000, yeah. Okay. So it started in 2000, and then it was decommissioned because it was not breaking even. It wasn't making a profit. It was a commercial service, privately run. Yeah.
Okay. And when we talk about subsidies and things like that, it's either the Hamilton City Council ratepayer subsidising, it's the Hamilton Regional Council ratepayers subsidising, or it's the taxpayer subsidising. Those are the three pockets it comes out of, isn't it? Which, of course, just about every person, other than Dave and Jeff, all the people I represent are probably in all three of those sets. Is that right? Am I accurate in saying that? So I guess what I'm saying is, when we say it's a subsidy from the ratepayer, from the government, it's the same people.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. On page 68, it talks about getting to Papakura and a transfer for. So at the moment, is this the trial only going to Papakura? Is that as far as it goes?
No, so the proposition, and Councillor Mallett's looking page 67, attachment 2, which is a description of the service, page 67,
yep.
Attachment 2. So this is an outline of the service that's been proposed.
Yep.
So the service is going from Franklin Station to Papakura, and at Papakura you would get off and you would transfer to the Auckland Metro system. So you jump on the Auckland Metro, which has all of its stops through to Britomart. We would very much like to penetrate deeper into Auckland.
Sorry, so just to be quite clear there, but this service stops at Papakura.
This service will stop at Papakura.
That's what we're talking about. All this funding and that is about a service that goes to Papakura. Then you just jump. You could have a mate pick you up in his car. You could jump in a taxi, or you could jump in a bus, or you could jump in the existing Auckland thing. So this service stops at Papakura.
Well, no, not actually correct, Chris, because the ticket that you buy gets you through to Britomart.
Yeah.
So it is it's a physical transfer of service. Yes.
Okay. Okay, so, yeah, but you would buy a ticket to Papakura?
No, you buy one to...
Hang on, if you wanted to stop at Papakura, you'd stop there. Your ticket would be cheaper, presumably, and then you pay a bit more if you want to go into Britomart, is that right?
The business model is that it's a ticket to Auckland.
Okay,
at the moment.
Okay, I was going to say the ticketing box on page 67 I found really difficult to follow, and that's, I guess, kind of a carry-on from this discussion I'm having now. So all of this funding we're talking about here gets us a station, park and ride, the government's or someone else is funding the rolling stock and the toilets on the rolling stock and all that sort of carry on, which will go to Papakura. Then will that train stop and you will jump onto another train, will you? Or you could jump onto another train, or you could get picked up by your mate, or you could get a bus or walk or bike or whatever. But that is the trial service. The animal we are talking about stops at Papakura, doesn't it?
Correct.
Yeah. And you would pay... You can obviously buy... I assume you can buy a ticket to Papakura or a ticket to Britomart, and you pay another something to go the extra bit on the train.
Just to answer your question...
One ticket.
Yeah, so if we get...
from the Waikato?
If we implement the HOP system, which is what we're intending to do,
The whole
then
system?
the HOP system is the ticketing system they use in the Auckland side.
Yep.
So you have a card, you can top that card up, and then you tag on when you get on board of the service, and then you tag off where you get off, and you will be charged the appropriate amount based on the distance you traveled.
Yeah.
So the zone fare, yeah. So in answering your question, if you were to board a service to Britomart, then you will pay the difference, which is what Auckland charges their customers to
get
ride the
from-
service.
Yeah, to get from Papakura to Britomart.
Britomart, or to any other station.
Gotcha. Okay, so what we are talking about is to Papakura.
I'm sorry. I think you're being confused actually by the staff. The ticket that's mentioned, the average ticket for $18 is to get you into Auckland. You do not have to buy
Into
another
Britomart?
ticket, into Auckland, wherever you happen to stop in Auckland. Which
Okay.
is, the Papakura service does stop there, but there's plenty of other stations in between
So,
as well.
okay, so if I bought a ticket to Papakura
Well, there's no-
and you bought a ticket
it's
to
not
Britomart, we'd be pay the same amount?
It's not envisaged. We haven't had that discussion yet. The discussion has been tickets from Hamilton or Huntly or Turco,
Yeah.
i.e. parts of Waikato, into Auckland. There may be some discussions
So my
about
question's
what you're
simple.
saying.
If I'm in Hamilton and I buy, if Dave it's like Da Vinci when he dropped the two cannonballs from the Leaning Tower of Pisa. If I'm in Hamilton and you're in Hamilton, I want to go to Papakura, you go to Britomart, you'll pay a bit more for yours?
That's not been finally decided, but most probably because Auckland Transport has to get a share of the overall. You'll see in there the average fare is $18. They'll have to get a share of that. So effectively, yes. But if you're paying the average of $18, that'll get you into Britomart. And out of that,
Sorry, Dave, that doesn't make sense. I mean,
if you're going in from Hamilton to Britomart,
Yep.
you'll pay $18 if you're paying the average, because there's
what's
discount.
the average you mean? I mean,
Well,
there's
the
a ticket
average
price, you don't...
average revenue per passenger, and the
Sorry, I thought that $18 was a suggested ticket price, not an average price.
It's average because there are discount. You know, if you use a 10 trip or a monthly concession, weekly, you know, that sort of thing, you get it cheaper than a one-off ticket, like happens on a whole lot of different services. Certainly happens on the Capital Connection.
Okay. Well, okay, so I don't think we're going to get this sorted
But
out.
they had to calculate the fares on what the average would be,
Yep.
and
Okay,
they based
well-
that average on how the Capital Connection between Palmerston and Wellington works.
Okay, sorry, that doesn't make sense to me, so I'll leave that because I'm not going to go any further. So the that bottom box on 67 starts off with a simple graduated fare for the Waikato portion of the trip is being proposed, which may be what Dave's been talking about. Can you just explain that to me? Like, in terms of, I'm going from Hamilton to Papakura and I want to get off there. That's the end of my destination. Or the next day I'm going to go from Hamilton to Papakura and then I want to go into Britomart. You know, I want to go not directly, because apparently I have to get off. I think I get off one train and go to another train. Is that right? I would do. Would I pay the same amount both ways? Both times?
No, so if you think about the interim service or the startup service and the stations along the way, people that are the intention is that people that depart from Hamilton and Handley will pay the same fare to Papakura, but those at both north of Waikato will pay a different fare based on the zone that they're boarding on
Okay.
and the distance travelled.
I was
Yeah.
quite clear. I'm starting from Hamilton, okay?
Yes.
So I represent people who live in Hamilton. So Hamilton to Papakura will be $18.
No, to Papakura they will pay $11 a night inclusive of GST. That's what they'll pay.
So where does the 18 get me to Britomart?
To Britomart, because the difference is $6.10, so that's up to $18.
So that's the bit that would go to the Auckland.
Yeah, but the reason why I say it's a simply graduated fare is because if the onboard ticketing system is not able to be implemented from day one, there will be a paper ticket-based system, which is what they use in the Capital Connection, which will allow you to have a one-way ticket to Britomart of $18.
Can I just pick up on Councillor McPherson's issue? Look, we haven't finalised the detailed business case and there's still ongoing discussions on that. So all of that will be really clear when it comes back in the detailed business case to you. So this was an update where we've got to, but some of the conversations are still happening on the ticketing, and we haven't quite finalised all of that. So, you know,
I mean, just a point going forward. If and when this thing gets off you will have to explain to the customers a lot clearer than I've had today on how they price things.
But don't forget my opening statements that a bit like Waikato Regional Council, this is all subject to the detailed business case coming back for approval to councils. So this is about keeping our funding provisions in. We land the deal with government on the elevated rates of funding. It'll all be in the detailed business case, which will come back to this council, and by that stage we would have all of the details finalised.
Gary, but there perhaps some high level understanding about the fare situation, because part of the travel is going to be on a new service. A portion of the overall fare has to go to that, which is the train we're talking about here. But because part of it's also on an existing Auckland service, part has to go to that. So that's the $6.10 that Jose mentioned. Yep. That's their fare. That's their discount fare.
Totally understand. Because they are operated by different people. They are different. People own different parts of the system. I understand that. Yeah. So that's what I was just trying to get was clarity.
For a Hamilton person with a hop card, if they pay $18, they get into the centre of Auckland or other bits within that zone.
Yeah. Okay. And now, I tried to ask this question earlier in the meeting. Does anyone know how many vehicles go to Auckland from Hamilton every day?
Yep, so look, all of that information will be in the detailed business case, but the answer to your question is about 16,000 vehicles per day northbound, about 18,000 southbound.
So 16,000 go up.
That's not from Hamilton. That's from Waikato, isn't it?
That's on the road going up.
Yeah, Gary asked from Hamilton.
Yeah, so it's hard to extrapolate the count just for Hamilton. I mean, we can look.
I'm happy to accept that, because I assume that some of the catchment of that customers we expect to get on this thing will be people from Morrinsville or people from, I suppose, people from maybe not Huntly, because they will have do they have a stop and hunt anyway? But people at the same latitude as we are, or whatever that one is. Is that latitude or latitude to Hamilton and south will probably come to Hamilton and use this, so I'm happy to, So, and we think it's 280 people who will go on the thing. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Mark.
Well, sorry I couldn't be with you here today. Mine's probably a deeper question than that.
Excellent.
Can I buy a pie on this train? Because the food seems to have dropped off it. And it's, I know it sounds a bit silly after these.
This is the important discussion.
These are the big issues. The pies and Wi-Fi seem to be gone from that. We talked about food and Wi-Fi, and that's actually quite food basically. It seems to be quite an important offering.
Yes.
You can.
Yeah. So the service that we're scoping up would include a cafe, pretty much like the Capital Connection.
Yep.
So you can go on there, you can make coffee, you can buy sandwiches and pies, and you can, on the return trip, you can buy a beer as well.
Answers Jeff's question. Brilliant. Okay. And Wi-Fi?
He was trying to lead up to that with that, just slip it in.
And Wi-Fi is a work in progress. It turns out that Wi-Fi is more difficult than we expected, but we see that as a really important part of the service offering. So it just comes down to what sort of Wi-Fi and at what cost. But we've certainly still got work going on that, and the answers will be yes in some form. It's just what form. We see that as a really important part of the service.
Because I noticed it missing from a lot of that.
Yeah, so Kiwiro has engaged a likely Wi-Fi provider and a contractor to be able to get some sense of the costings and the investment level. And I think it is feasible, but they are not entirely sure whether they will be able to implement it from day one of the service. So some form of maybe even trial Wi-Fi service could be available, but that's uncertain at this stage.
Right, because they can do it on planes, so possibly, and buses, So... Okay, I'm not going to do your job. Great, thank you. Just need to know it's still in the mix.
I think the issue with buses is that they travel within the locality of Hamilton, whereas this goes out in the country, and that's...
Through the swamp, so there's a coverage there. The Whangabrino swamp. But So look, we understand its
Yeah, yeah.
importance and we're working on that, and at the very least you could get Wi-Fi at stations, I guess, so you can save up and download, but we're trying to get it continuous
Right,
on the
yeah,
service.
yeah, cool. Okay, thank you.
Okay, sorry, Siggy, thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the report. And I'm going to ask another very high-level question. Would there be wine as well, or just beer? I mean, honestly.
No, definitely,
whatever.
definitely wine, beer and coffee.
Oh, thank you. Awesome.
So look,
Okay, no, don't worry about it. I don't want to know anymore. I've
Yeah.
actually got another question.
Sure,
So
yeah.
don't worry about the details. I just follow on to what Councillor Kessinger said before, and it was about the subsidy for the train travellers. Now, I just worked out there's about 22 buses going up from Hamilton to Auckland every day. Do we subsidise per passenger there too? Or is that all paid for?
No.
We don't subsidise that one. Okay, that's all I want to know. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, Chris, I'm interested in the proportion of businesses that might be wanting to participate in this. In my other job at Business News, I've had a few conversations with business people who are really quite excited about it. And I note the Fonterra involvement there. I just wonder if you can just flesh that out a bit, how that came to be, and just what we maybe can expect from Fonterra there with their involvement. It seems quite a very positive figures that they're talking about.
So just to respond to your question, we...
Sorry, that's on page 22. 22
Paragraphs 22.
Paragraph 22 and 23.
So the Waikato Regional Council, in partnership with Hamilton City, we commissioned Mobius Research, an Auckland-based company, to do a qualitative research assessment, and also that involved communicating and talking to different sort of regional stakeholders from the business community. And besides Fonterra, they also
Sorry,
talked to
Jose,
yeah.
can you just go back a bit from that?
Oh,
We're
yeah,
getting
sorry.
a bit of feedback in there.
Yeah, sorry. So they talked to the Waikato DHB, Waikato University, the Perry Group, Fonterra, and Gallagher's, and other organisations. And that's on the technical report, and sort of the detailed findings of that. So that's how that came about. And then also our councillor, Russ Remington, contacted the regional manager, and her name is Philippa, and I think she presented to your council too, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, and then she was the one that led that internal survey that was executed within Fonterra, and that elicited that 100 and or so responses. Yeah.
Yeah. Would we be, this may be here, and I apologise if I've missed it, would we be looking at offering anything in particular for businesses that travel frequently, and how might that work? Is that something we've...
We haven't had those discussions, but in the early days, that was a notion that we talked about. If you could sign up a business like Fonterra to 50 seats per week or whatever.
Yeah.
So look, we haven't got to that stage yet,
sure.
but it's certainly an idea that would be in our minds to do that. And I think the information that Fonterra offered was encouraging in that regard.
Yeah,
So if it progressed, I would imagine it's something we'd definitely be looking at. That helps de-risk it as well.
As part of the guided questionnaire that the interviewers used, we did ask if they were willing to engage in a sort of a conditional survey.
You don't need to lean forward like one of those regional council ones. You can speak from it.
Yeah, and we did get some responses from private stakeholders. However, I don't think they were too happy to provide that information at this stage in terms of engaging in any sort of, preliminary agreement of the kind with the Waikato Regional Council to purchase a given certain amount of tickets on the service. Yeah, but they certainly are supportive. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we've got Leo, thanks.
Thanks, Mr Chair. I notice there's going to be about 280 passengers per day. When I look at page 59 and the passenger demand survey which you carried out, 17% of those persons said they would make a journey at least 3 times a week, which according to my calculations is 187. Each train has a capacity of 189 passengers. So we'd probably be lucky if we got a full train instead of having 2 trains each day. Would that be correct?
No, the actual figures are 280, Leo.
Yeah, I know. But when you look at the survey,
Yeah, but that was the ones that said they'd travel 3 times a week. There are others that
Yeah, yeah.
said they'd travel once a week.
and once a month and all that sort of
Yeah,
stuff.
but
too.
then
Sure.
they add up on top of that 183 that you get.
Yeah. Okay. Just for the information of what happened previously, as I noticed that the previous train was called the Waikato Connection, and that started service on the 26th of June 2000, and it was for a 6-month trial, and then in October 2000, some 4 months later, Transrail actually aborted that service. And the reason for it is, of course, is that there was 129 passengers, and most of those persons boarded at Pukekohe or Papakura, and there was 30 from Hamilton each time. Okay, we're 18 years down the track, and there's far more congestion on the motorway. Have you looked at such things as having a high occupancy vehicle lane on the motorway, which would probably get you into Auckland in about an hour and a half, hour and 20 minutes by car? There's many ways of skinning a cat, isn't there? And this is one option.
So look, part of the business case we'll be looking at options, so that's part of the business case approval. But in this case, I think it's important to put it in the context of government's policy on interregional rail. So they are signalling a clear policy shift to interregional rail as a service. But the business case would look at that, and I would have thought the logistics of getting a transit lane on the motorway all the way through, it would take a long time to do that, would be my view on that as an option.
And one last question is, park and ride out at by the base there, will there be a charge for persons who park there?
We
Like
haven't
2 hours free or something like that?
we haven't addressed anything about that, but I guess that's an option for council to consider. But at this point in time, we haven't considered priced parking.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, are there any other questions? If not, as said, this is a report as an update. I'm moving 2A and B and Jeff seconding it. Is there any discussion? Well, if you want to go into discussion, put your name down there. I'm going to start off with that. And is all the questions done? Just checking. Thanks. Okay, there's a speaking order coming up. Look, start with actually Leo's point in relation to what has happened in the past. His figures are absolutely correct for that short service that was tried. It was an unsubsidised service put on direct by Kiwi Rail, like they've done with the Capital Connection down in Wellington. They received no subsidy and just used the existing gear that they had. And they pulled the service they put it on without consultation and pulled it without consultation with either the councils here or the government. However, in 2011, and those figures were 60 to 70, 2011 a survey was done very similar to the one that was just done before that had passenger figures of a... So I'm just going to wait for the Mayor and Councillor Mallett to finish talking. Yeah, look, there's been quite a lot of talking going on there in the last half hour, please. In 2011, the survey showed conservatively there'd be 183 people would want to use that rail service regularly. In 2018, that figure is 280. That's a 53% increase in 7 years. That figure of 280, which isn't in the actual report, was actually had 40% deducted off what the survey came back. In other words, they deliberately took a conservative view of what the answer that came from the survey to get the 280. Look at right next to where it shows the figure of 280, it also shows what people would ultimately like to use, which is an express service, and about 650 people would use that a day, and that also is a conservative look at the figures that came back from the survey. This service proposed is a start-up service. It's not the final answer, it's not the bells and whistles, it doesn't have the new gear, it doesn't go, and because it's not possible with a diesel train all the way into Britomart all by itself. Absolutely, that's the ideal situation. And if you have a service like that, it's going to be 650 people according to that service. By the time you get it, probably at well over 1,000 a day would use that. And the experience between similar sized cities in Australia is they do have those sorts of numbers, and you would need a lot more trains than just the 2 each way. One thing that is being discussed at the moment is the possibility that at least one of those trains each day might have to come back to Hamilton for servicing, so that would actually be a morning return service and an afternoon back up there for little extra cost other than the fuel, because the staff and the rolling stock are already paid for. So this is not the final solution. This is the start-up that proves it, that proves the case, and actually gets the bugs ironed out, just like many of our bus services were started up as well. The model that's being followed is very similar to the normal model for bus transport. Subsidy from the regional ratepayers or the ratepayers in the area, fares, and a subsidy from government. No different in principle, a little different in amounts. And in actual fact, it's slightly less ratepayer subsidy. And for those concerned about that, look at the figures in the report here of what happened. The Regional Council said we are going to charge an average of $25 per ratepayer. I think a maximum was 90 thereabouts, and a minimum was 15, depending on your value of your property. And the ratepayers came back, and 59% of the submissions that they had were in support of that, even with the cost going across the board, not just to rail users. So that's the actual figure from the public in Hamilton that was given back to the Regional Council. People that have suggested that buses could be an option, or high occupancy vehicles and that, I agree that they should have a high occupancy vehicle lane on all the motorways, but it ain't going to happen in a hurry. If you look at how chocker those are at the moment, Chris identified the problem. It's going to take a long time to get agreement to do that, and apart from the bus lane in North Shore, they've got nothing like that anywhere in Auckland. So I suspect they're not going to be in a hurry to start something mainly to benefit Waikato residents, but it's something that should be looked at in the future. Buses, they get caught in exactly the same traffic that the cars do. And that traffic, that congestion, the Regional Council did a study of this a few months ago. That congestion point where it's hit on average on the southern motorway is going southwards by over 1 kilometre a year. 11 kilometres it moves south in the last 10 years. And another 10 years and it's going to be over the top of the Bombay Hills, because if you've been in it recently, before you get to the Drury turnoff is where you hit the congestion. And so I'm suggesting to you, and it seems to a large number of people here, that this train is going to be the solution for some people. It's going to help by providing an alternative choice that's not there at the moment. We play our part by providing infrastructure. We do that for buses as well. This provides a connection between the biggest city in the country and currently the 4th biggest, soon to be the 2nd biggest city in the country. And I think that if you look anywhere in the Western world, and in fact most of the world, that's the sort of, when you get those sorts of size populations at this sort of distance apart, rail services are what connect them best and fastest. It's not the fastest service right now, but it's still faster than the average transport car driving time, that was reported by Fonterra staff at up to 3 hours. This is 2.25 hours into centre of Auckland, including waiting on the platform for a couple of minutes at Papakura. So I think it's an excellent start-up service. And if we don't start it now, with a government that's supportive and going to put in the great majority of the money, I suggest it probably never will. That's me, thanks. James.
Thank you, Chair. And isn't it great we all have a different opinion on this sort of thing? Look, I've lived with an exceptional rail service when I lived in Brisbane for a few years, and that was exceptional. They had express trains as well. I have concerns about this being viable and sustainable, like I said before, for that services a very small percentage of Hamiltonians. The majority of people that actually travel to Auckland to work are not labourers, and they're not on the minimum wage. A lot of them, I would hesitate to say, would have company vehicles as well. Look, the train, if it leaves at 5:55 in the morning, will arrive at Britomart at 8:25 a.m, which would be a lot later than most people that would have professional jobs up there would like to get there.
Point of order, James, 5 to 6, not
5:55?
2 hours, 25 minutes.
Yep.
If you're 8:30, it's 5 to 6, not 5 to 5.
Leaves Hamilton at 5 to 6? Yes,
Yeah.
5:55, I said.
Oh, sorry, I misheard you, sorry. I thought
So
you said
8:20,
5 to...
yeah, it arrived around about
Can you rule
8:25
on a
a.m.
point of order, please?
And if they leave at 5:30, because they can't leave at 4:30, because they'd be doing their company out of some hours, they'd arrive back at 8 p.m. So look, this is $6 million we're looking at over 10 years for around about, if you're generous, around about 300 to 400 people at best. And we're looking at spending $18 million for the Rototuna hub for around about a population of around about 10,000 people over probably a lifetime, which I think is a far better spend of ratepayers' money than $6 million for a few hundred Hamiltonians. Thank you.
Sorry, next is Angela.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I think it's a little early to say $6 million for a few Hamiltonians. This is still early stages, and I am, while I'm supportive of passenger rail, and it will be something that will end up being very important to the city and to the region in the future, it is all about timing, and I will be holding off my any real concerns and judgments until we get the detail, because the devil is in the detail in the business case. A couple of cautions at this stage around, I think we do need some transparency and being upfront as we move along this journey with the costs, and with a real understanding of, as it washes through the detailed business case, what the costs will be to Hamilton ratepayers. Certainly, as we know, with all services that local government is involved in and delivers for the community, many of us, like myself, never use a bus and public transport, but are happy to contribute as long as that subsidy is reasonable. I think I recall it may have been a minister's letter, or certainly there was conversation from the working group which made its way into our reports, some caution around a service that delivers less than what the public would be expecting. You know, I guess we look at a full service, it's going to be a nice, comfortable, new, plush carriage to sit in, where business people and commuters will be able to sit in and do their business for 2 hours and 20 minutes up to Auckland. So there's a bit of a caution there for me, because I know the working group is over that and aware of that, and I hope that should this go ahead, that doesn't have a detrimental effect for the future of the service. But look, I think we're tracking along pretty well, and there's enough information here at the moment to keep me comfortable. And Chair, I wonder if, before we get that business case, if we can have put that onto a briefing, so we can get into the detail of how long am I going to be waiting at a stop, and what's the ticket colour going to look like, because we've tried to do all of that at the meeting today, and yeah. So
I'll just ask that to be put in as a note in the minutes, that request.
Yeah, and just one last thing, Chair. I know it's early days yet, but I do want to thank you for your work and your leadership in this. Since I've been on council, you have been a future passenger of this passenger rail, and your dedication and drive to this project needs to be noted. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Councillor Mallett. Are you going to thank me as
Thank you. Am I what?
Are you going to thank me as well?
Thanks for exposing yourself here. Thank you. Look, I think this thing has a huge risk of blowing up in our face, and I'm pretty sure that it will blow up in our face. And it's a huge risk for very little gain. I mean, we're talking about 280 people, have suggested they will use it. I know how these sorts of surveys work. yeah, we used to do it in the gym. Would you come to the gym at 2 o'clock in the morning? Yeah, because it doesn't cost the person you're asking. So these people are, I would not call them, I don't know who they are, I guess they're random, but they will not be well considered decisions, I don't think, so I think they're probably overstated. Even if all of them, even if all 280 people drive by themselves to Auckland, it would be 1.75% of the traffic leaving Hamilton and 1.55% of the traffic leaving the wider Waikato, based on the figures that I've just been given. So the benefit is just not there. There is no benefit in terms of reducing congestion. And also, you know, this train is going to stop at Papakura or Britomart or something. You've still got to get to where you're going. So, I mean, you're going to be dropped off, you're going to be picked up at a rail station, you're going to be dropped off at a rail station, you've got to get a taxi or walk or something to get to where you're going. So this is not point to point. I am very concerned about and I don't mean to be derogatory to anyone, but and perhaps will be found out in when the detailed business case comes back, but there seems to be an awful lot of uncertainty over how pricing is going to work and things like that, and maybe it's too early in the day to get that stuff finalised. And I'll just finish off by saying that wherever the subsidies come from, they are subsidies. They'll be subsidies paid for by the Hamilton City Council ratepayer, paid for by Waikato Regional Council ratepayers, or general taxpayers through the central government. So this whole thing only works if it's subsidised. I'm heavily against subsidies because they disrupt the market. I think if we avoid this, I think we're dodging a bullet, to be honest. In fact, I wouldn't be supportive of doing any more work on it. I think from a high level point of view, we can see that the figures are absurd, to be honest. 280 people. Mind-boggling, really, to suggest we're going to spend that much money on them. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Dave. Yeah, look, I just want to remind councillors that we are still waiting for a detailed business case here. So for the councillors who've closed off their minds already, I might just suggest that you keep your mind open and see how the figures stack up when we get a detailed business case. I think for me, the point for me is how hard this has been pushed by central government. They've taken a very strong lead with this. And yes, there's a will in Hamilton for this, but we are also responding to a very strong push from central government. And I've been really impressed by how much they want it and how, the spirit of partnership there. I don't think I've encountered that before. Not just for the central government, but also the councils and NZTA, the other councils. So I think Angelo mentioned it earlier on. I don't think people out in the community realise quite how much money the government is putting into this and how much resource they are putting into this. It's an awful lot. When I first heard some of the figures at one of the earlier meetings that we were hoping for from government and the percentages, I thought, geez, I don't think they'll go for that. But they are. And it's very fashionable for people to throw off and say ratepayers are subsidising it. But in actual fact, a heck of a lot is coming from central government towards this. And I'm very impressed with what's happened so far, and I think we're absolutely on the right, I was going to say track, but we're absolutely on the right path, and I look forward to the detailed business case.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. There's some common themes running through this meeting, actually, and still to carry on some of the items coming up, and that's around congestion. Congestion is becoming a very real safety and economic issue. And more we're being asked to spend money to take initiatives that provide alternatives to that congestion rather. We've just been through that one with cycleways, etc. And for that same argument, I'll be supporting this in the meantime as well. We're caught in a very tricky point in time. We've got a lot of big fat roads, but we've got even more cars than those roads can handle at this stage. And I sound terribly like I'm anti-car, but I love my car and really enjoy it. But I would be very interested in taking a train for several reasons. This would be more, I see, than just a commute to Auckland and commute back like it is in a car. This would be what you call net time, no extra time. This would be productive time, and that's why I was asking those seemingly glib questions about the pie and the Wi-Fi, and that this is actually 4 hours of work time for a lot of people on this trip. So this is actually taking away that travel time if you can organise your day around it. So we're actually providing quite a productive service, and if we are going to be the third biggest city productively in the country, we've got to take steps like this. We've got to think a little bit more imaginatively. It is not the end product that we're talking about funding at this stage, and yes, Gary's right, the numbers are economically absurd at the moment, but to stop it now because of that would be like saying to a baby, no, you can't walk, so you're not going to try. You're not going to, you don't give up on a kid, you just keep trying and you keep going. And this isn't trying in vain either. This is starting at the bottom and working up. This is not the end product. I think I can envisage more trains, more services, better services, smarter services, and more economic services as you go. I mean, the only place where you can start at the top immediately is when you're digging a hole. So it's not the end product. So I'd say, yep, look, let's carry on. Let's get the report in in October. And as I say, Festine Lonte, I think it is, hasten slowly through this. We go through toes in first. And Jeff's right too. The time has never been righter from a central government perspective either. They're keen. They're champing at the bit to throw money at this. So let's get some of that.
Thanks, Mark. Deputy Mayor Martin.
25 years' time, prediction Auckland will be 2.3 million and Greater Hamilton maybe 250,000, $250,000. Are you honestly suggesting within 25 years the only way we will get from Hamilton to Auckland is by vehicular transport along a very, very busy motorway / expressway? Again, we talk about the excellent Brisbane, Ipswich, Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast services. Those services obviously started somewhere. Any rail service started somewhere. And I think if we don't have this rail passenger alternative, that will become an increasing negative as far as Hamilton's location and its proximity to Auckland. Our big, huge advantage over other cities is we're actually close. We are the closest major other city to our super city, Auckland. We're unique in that we can offer a small city lifestyle, but be within comfortable, convenient range at the moment of Auckland. But if in fact the convenient range is 2.5, 3 hours in a stressful car ride, as we do get caught in the Manurewa South car park, then that advantage will slide away. So this is actually building in a long-term alternative transport option in terms of freedom of choice between people who live in Greater Hamilton and people who live in Greater Auckland. Also, it's a sitter. It's plain as day that we are also looking at a major commuter corridor from Auckland right back to Hamilton. Now, how many years ago when you drove through Pocono, you went and stopped at the pie shop there and you drove on? What did you see in Pocono? You saw rural fields. What do you now see in Pocono? Fast forward 10, 15 years, what are you going to see in Meremere? What are you going to see in Tikawhara, Huntly, Ngarawahia, North Hamilton? So I think this is where it is so crucial that you have the ability as a council, we have the ability as a council to look forward 10 years ahead. Think of Hamilton, think of that route 10 years ago, see the huge changes already. So obviously, and this passenger rail service is not the end game, it is but the beginning game. With the third rail being constructed in South Auckland, obviously the objective is to have an option of being on one train going right through to Britomart. Second objective is going to Manukau, wherever, and getting the express bus on a dedicated lane to our Auckland International Airport. The objective over time is like you can go from Brisbane to Ipswich, train on the hour every half hour, etc., etc. So this is but the beginning, and we have to take this step. We have a government at the moment who I hope, and this is my message to this government, you must, to the Labour New Zealand Green government, we do expect as a city for you to put serious money and serious investment into passenger rail. So that manifesto promise has to translate into dollars and cents, serious money, and I think there's every evidence that they're doing that. And also why I asked Parakafi McLean before about the second phase of the major investigation into rail, because obviously we will be looking and wanting to work with government in terms of serious investment in track and infrastructure. Obviously one of the roadblocks at this point, of rail blocks, is that length of commuter time. So clearly there's got to be some look at what do you need to do in the Waimarina swamp area in terms of so that we can actually ultimately have a fast service. If we were anywhere else in the world, and I've just come back from China, you know, to trains going 250 miles an hour, that kind of thing, don't think that is not possible in New Zealand eventually. So in summary, this is but the beginning, but we must support this.
Thank you. Mayor Andrew.
When 4.5 million New Zealanders are paying for Hamilton's infrastructure, we'll take the money. New subsidies are being offered for cycleways, walking paths, rail and affordable housing. And this is a change, and let's take advantage of it. And I also want to, I've seen the huge amount of work that Chris Allen as officer and Dave McPherson, Councillor Dave McPherson, have put into this. Many trips to Wellington, lots of trips to Auckland, a huge amount of work. And I just want to just say thank you for you driving this on behalf of central government, on behalf of regional council, and bringing this all together, the two of you together. So I know you've put probably hundreds of hours into this, and I just want to thank you. When this does open up, you guys will be cut on the ribbon.
They usually give that to the baby kissing to the mayor, don't they? Hey, look, I'm just going to wrap up with a couple of points. I think that's all the speakers. Thanks. Gary made the point, suggested that in relation to the survey, that the people who it would cost aren't the ones being asked, or aren't the ones answering the question. The regional council asked the people who are being asked to pay the subsidy. That's the Hamilton ratepayers. Were all asked, what do you think of this? Of those that responded, 59% said, yes, we're willing to put that money in. They supported it. When we ran a survey as a city council, again a professional survey in 2007, just to gauge public support for that, the support level was 71% for it. Now that wasn't a question relating to money, that was just to the service, so hence probably the difference there. But there is a strong support in this community for such a service. Gary said he didn't support subsidies, and that's fair enough. He's been absolutely consistent on that. I put to the rest of you, though, that no public transport service in the world happens without subsidies, and certainly no rail service, no passenger rail service happens without subsidies. And when you're talking about subsidies, the biggest single transport subsidy in this country is for cars. Each of the last 3 years, the central government spent $2 billion just on motorways around the place, on state highways around the place. That's not counting their subsidy to the roads in the different towns. No, not all of it now, and that's one of the problems, because petrol usage is declining. But thank you for the point of order, Gary. The next thing, and Mark I think made this point too, is the improved productivity users of the services will get. They're no longer sitting driving or sitting as passengers unable to do any work. They're actually able to work on the train, and that point has been made many times. It's a government policy promise. While we have been pushing for this for, as Angela said, for a long time, the government has nevertheless made this a promise before they got elected, and we saw the opportunity to coincide their promise with our desire for the service. The two matched. Just think about what the decision we made 2 weeks ago about the special housing area. North Rotokauri, round the corner, quite literally stone's throw from the Rotokauri station. 2,000 houses, up to 2,000 houses, up to 4,000 people go in that area alone. And of course the rest of the Rotokauri will fill up following that. That's going to be very advantageous for people that work in Auckland to live in Hamilton, and that improves the economy of this area ultimately as well. So I think it's a no-brainer that we continue to support the service. I think that it's important for the future of Hamilton, if we want to be a modern city, that we have that sort of connection. Thank you. So let's go to the board to vote. Thanks. So the motion is as written, paragraph 2 on page 57. And it's up there. Thanks. Thank you. Carried 9-2. Thanks. Okay, we'll get on to, we've got a couple of short items like parking coming up, so we... Thank you, Jose. Yep. Chris, you can stay on the hot seat. And Jason, he's called you up to help him. And that's on page 75, councillors. We'll go for a coffee break after this item. Oh, you coming back? We'll still be going, Gary. Okay, Chris. I was trying to con him into going, quick.
I just wondered if I might just quickly introduce it.
Oh, sorry, my apologies, Jeff. I meant to ask you, sorry, to just introduce it, yeah.
All right, very quickly, as Chair of the CBD Parking Task Force, I'm happy to introduce this report today. I think it's a good one, and I think you'll see that the Task Force is recommending the trial be extended for another 12 months. The Task Force believes the trial has progressed pretty well. The staff report shows improved parking occupancy in the CBD, and high retailer and public support for the trial. As you're aware, it took a while to get the trial up and running at full capacity, so a significant advantage in extending the trial will be the opportunity to get a longer period to analyse its impact once with all the technology working at full noise. As councillors will be aware, the cost of extending the trial has already been factored into the LTP. The report recommends staff report to the Council in April next year with an updated review of the trial. The April reporting time gives councillors a good lead-in time should they want to make changes before next year's annual plan. With that, I'll pass over to Chris.
Yeah, so thank you, Mr Chair. I think you've taken most of the things that I was going to say. So look, and maybe at the risk of duplication, so the recommendation in front of you today does come from the Parking Task Force after they've looked at all of the data. Councillor Jeff has already made the point that the funding to continue the trial is already built into the draft 10-year plan. So no changes would be required to your draft 10-year plan, but if you chose not to continue with the parking, there would be additional parking revenue that would get from the alternative option. So firstly, I'd just like to just quickly summarise the reasons, I think, for the recommendation to continue. Like from a staff perspective, the introduction of the technology is giving us real-time data that's really valuable in just allowing us to understand parking behaviour and how our stock has been managed. So regardless of our pricing policy, the investment has been fantastic in terms of just understanding what's happening in our parking stock. So councillors might recall that our advice as staff all the way through has been to keep our eye on the utilisation of the parking stock, with an optimum being at the 85%, and to keep an eye on that. So clearly the data is showing us that during the period of the trial, we are getting increased occupancy, but not yet to the point across the whole stock that it's over congested and where it may become a problem. So it is rising at a steady rise, which is positive. It's not beyond 85%, which is positive. In addition to that, the task force has overseen 2 surveys to just determine how our customers feel about the free parking trial, and in the report you'll see it's quite a positive response, both from the HCBA members who are paying a targeted rate for the parking and just the general parkers. So look, the financial implications of so we've put two options in front of you to consider. So just remembering that the recommendation of this report is for this committee to recommend to council whether to continue or not continue with the trial. So there's two financial graphs, and I'll just quickly point to those. So on page 82 and paragraph 55. So, and I'll just quickly point out what I think the important figure on that. And the important figure is the 215,607 that you see in the bottom right. So that's indicating that we are getting more revenue than what we anticipated for this year, to the tune of $215,607. So that's positive. The finances are really complicated because over the last 3 years, we've never had one full year of a particular parking policy. So if you go back to 15, 16, it was part of the CCTP before free before 9 and after 3. The next year it was part of the 2-hour free parking. So every year it's been a part year, which makes the next table quite challenging. So if you just move to page 84 and paragraph 66, and that's the options are being set out. The important figure I'd probably draw your attention to once again is the bottom right-hand figure, which is 1,112,666. So that's our assessment if you looked at the two options for a full year of the difference in revenue that you would get between the two options. So if we reverted to our base option, which is the CCTP option or the Central City Transformation Plan, free before 9 and after 3, you'd collect approximately $1,112,000 more than what we're doing in option 2. If council, and the last point I'd make is if council decided to not continue the trial and revert back to option 2, it would probably take us 3 months to transition back to that option, which is why I've got the 9-month sort of column there, just to reflect in terms of the communication, some technology changes and getting ready to move back. It would probably take us 3 months to revert back, and that's why I've got another column for 9 months there. So some of that is probably confusing, so I'm happy to answer any questions on the full report.
So just in terms of the recommendation on page 75, draw your attention to 3B, that's option 1. If you're of a mind to support that. If anyone doesn't support that, they may move option, an alternative to B, which will be option 2, or some other version if they want. But that's the two options as Chris has described, and that's where they'll come into play in that vote. But we'll go back to those other pages. Sorry, so we've got a questioning order, which is James first.
Mr. Chair, can I just make one more point? Sorry, I forgot. Yeah. So in terms of, we have if you go to the page 84 and you look at that revenue difference between the two options, 1,112,000. As a team, since we wrote the report, we think that the $200,000 extra revenue we're getting this year is sustainable. So we could build that into the 10-year plan, and we think we'd get that revenue now on the trial, now the extra revenue over what we budgeted, so it would close that gap, if you like, by 200,000 from the 1,112,000.
So that would come forward on Thursday and Friday as a proposal from management to the LTP if we follow option 1?
If you followed option 1, yes. Yep.
And if we follow option 2, we'd have the figure bottom right on page 84 in the table there, 1112.
Yeah, with the view that for a part year would be slightly different, but that would be for year 2 when we've got a full.
But you'd have those figures ready for us either way on Thursday?
Yes.
Thanks. Okay, we've got James first, thanks.
No, sorry, I think Chris is psyched.
Okay, good on you. Angela.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, thanks, Chris. I was trying to make clear what option 1 and option 2 is. So The option 2 is the continuation of the trial now, which is,
No, sorry, to be clear, so option 1 is the continuation of the
sorry.
trial, which is 2 hours free. Option 2 is to revert back to the...
3 before 9 and
Yes.
3 after 3.
Yep.
So does that option 2, because the Central City Transformation Parking Plan included the technology for the sensors on the ground, but then pay and display units, which this trial doesn't have yet. Is that correct?
That's correct. So we haven't put pay and display technology in, so there were decisions made that we've gone without the pay and display.
And it was keeping a mix of using the technology app and using the meters.
Yep.
So there was budget in the plan, I think it was around $700,000 to put in the sensors and the pay and display under the Central City Transformation Parking proposal. Was that money still there, or would that have to be additional?
No, so there's no funding in here to put in pay and display. So we'd revert back to using the Duncan meter heads, the
But we use
parking
those
meters.
now.
We use those now, yeah.
So there would, to go back to the Central City Transformation Plan 1, 3 before 9, free after 3, we would have to put in money into the LTP to purchase the pay and displays.
If we chose to go with the pay and displays, we could choose to stay with the existing
Yes.
1947 metres.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and promote our parking, the parking app as well.
Yeah. So my supplementary question was, if we reverted to the 3 before 9, free after 3, the sensors are still an investment that stays.
Yes.
We would have to purchase, well, we could purchase as an option the pay and display,
Yes.
get rid of the 1947 metres, and could we still use, with the pay and display and the sensors, could we still use the app, the parking app thing?
Yes.
So we could use that.
Yes.
Do you have a rough idea of the cost of, I mean, we're getting, if that trial went ahead, there would be an extra $1 million a year, so we're looking at $10 million over the life of the LTP.
1.1.
1.1 million. So it's,
There was a figure that per machine we had.
Yeah.
So I think they just...
yeah, they're calculating it now.
Yeah, we're just trying to recollect the figure for the pay and displays.
Yeah.
So we think, and I have to check that, I think the figure was about $300,000, but it was quite a condensed sort of area, so it was the core central city and not the full out to the extremities.
So there'd be some reworkings of what that cost would be to cover the new censored area, which is wider than what was in the original parking proposal. Yeah. Okay. All right. Look, I thought the survey was good. I did think, with the greatest respect, that the question, do you think 2 hours free parking is a good idea, was a pretty interesting question. Do you think this lunch free is good? People are going to say no. Going to say yes. But, however, on page 103, question 10 was very valuable. And so was, how often people come into the CBD, etc. But question 10, of course, was do you come into the CBD more often since the free parking has been available? And the overwhelming majority of people said no. I didn't go through all of those comments because there's too many to read, but was there one particular theme that came through about why they said free parking didn't bring them in more often? Was there another barrier to that? It may have nothing to do with free parking.
I'll just check.
Who collated the survey? Maybe the working group.
Yeah, so it came to the working group. So,
yeah.
Evelisa, do you know the answer to that?
So that question is in relation to question 8, which is on page 101. So there were 40 people who already came into the CBD on a daily basis, so therefore that then gave you they don't, if they'd answered coming in daily, then they'd answered, I don't come in more often.
Okay, so
'cause
they
I already
come in
da-"
anyway?
Yes.
So it's
Yes.
not bringing, okay, so that's like important information to flesh out, so thank you for that. I think that's all my questions, thank you.
Thanks. Ryan, please.
On page 81, just regarding the point 44, the app, the low app update, part of the trial attributed to only being marginal, blah, 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 i.e. the offer is available without any action being taken. Can you just expand on that?
Yeah, so I think, Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's about validation. So the technology just allows you to come in and get 2 hours, so you don't have to take an action yourself to get the 2 hours. So the alternative is you come in, you have a proposal where you come in and you've got to do something on your app to get the 2 hours.
Right.
So if that was the case, you'd have a stronger use of the app. So it's about validation. Our technology is validating the parking event. And an alternative option is you come in and as a park and you've got to do something positive to get your 2 hours. So if we had a process like that, you'd have a higher uptake of the app. So that's why we're saying it's an unusually low uptake of the app, because our technology is just drive in, park, walk away, and you get your 2 hours. You don't have to do anything.
So the app is a little bit redundant at the moment. In that
It's been used for people that are paying for the extra hours over the 2 hours. So
Right.
that's where the usage is coming from. Yeah.
Okay. And on page 98, back to the graph.
Sorry, 98?
Yeah, at the bottom of the page. I was confused with the offer, so paid anyway. I was guilty of doing that initially because I wasn't sure, so I wanted to hedge my bets. I guess part of that comes with.
You're not getting it back.
No, that was my third question. But no, I guess some of that comes with awareness and launching a new, trial, etc. Can or will you do more around the education going forward if this trial continues over 9 months?
Yeah, so look, I think we had a really strong education program as the trial was coming in. Particularly, we had ambassadors going around and talking to people and trying to educate them, and we still got people feeding the meter, which you obviously did as well, because they were confused. But we also took a softly approach on infringements as well, and just talking to people and warning people. So your question is, would we still intend to go forward on an education program about that? I'm making up my own answer to that, but I think yes, but not as vigorously as we did in the lead-in to it. So it might be more through just regular promotion through media or something.
Yeah, sure. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Gary, please.
Thanks, Chris and Jason. Hey, on page 82, there's a graph. On the left-hand side, there's one that says actuals 2016/17, and the bottom line of that is 1.5 million, $1,551,185. So that's the actual surplus we achieved in that financial year. Is that correct?
That's right, and just that particular financial year had
some funny things, yeah.
Yeah, it had part of the original regime and it had part of the CCTP.
So that year there, that year already had suffered a slight loss, hadn't it? Because we had free parking before, and after 3. Is that right? So if that had gone back a year, that figure would have been higher.
The figure would have been higher, yeah.
Okay, so that's the last. Okay, even that year is a little bit understated. You've got a forecast, so the far right column, forecast end of EOFY, I assume is end of financial year, where the operating surplus has dropped from 1.5 to 244,000.
Yes.
And that includes the targeted rate from businesses within the area?
Yep, for a part year again, yep.
Yeah, okay, for a part year. So does that mean this year, well, the forecast for the end of this year, and we're getting quite close to that now, we're down $1.3 million.
Correct. So that was the decision you made as council
that's right.
to get the benefits of the free parking. It was a reduction of revenue of that order.
Thank you. All right, thank you. And you're saying this is already factored, that revenue reduction is already factored into the 10-year plan?
Yep, so the first year of the 10-year plan would be a full year of the 2-hour free, the first full 2 year.
Okay. So a revocation of the free parking, presume, as long as people don't get their, if we could go back, there's probably $1.5 million revenue, or not revenue, operating surplus that we're giving away.
I think if you go to the graph over the page, it's that 1.12. So that's the difference between a full year and a part year as well.
Okay.
So remember, we'd be reverting back to the CCTP, whereas the figure you were using is sort of going back to half of the original regime and half of CCTP.
Okay. So I think I've been quoting 800,000 or something. So it's more than that then.
Yeah, so if you look at what makes up that 1.2, the 800,000 is through the revenue coming from the meters, but there's also a revenue loss on infringements, because we're not ticketing for overstays because people have got a free 2 hours now. So,
Okay. All right, thank you very much, and I apologise, I have to pick a kid up from school.
Yeah, so record Councillor Mallett's apologies, please, who seconded Leo and me. For half an hour. Yeah, that's right. Don't let him loose on any others. Okay, sorry, I'll move the apologies of Gary and Martin accepted, seconded by James. Those in favour, against, carried. Okay, who's next? Leo, thanks.
If I could just come back to the graph here on page 82. When I look at the parking meters, basically we've lost $760,972 out of the parking meters. Is that correct?
So
take my word for it, Chris. I've done it on the calculator.
So you're looking at the left-hand column, actuals, 216.
Year-to-date, actual in April. Yep. Okay, so we've lost that. Fees and user charges. Can you tell me what that is?
So the fees and user charges is just the summary of the parking meters and the parking permits. So it's just the it's just the summary of those two items. Okay.
Then we've lost 187,000 from parking infringements. Why is there such a big decrease in traffic infringements with 334,449? Because they wouldn't have been part of this trial, would they?
No,
your traffic infringements would be your registrations, your warrants of fitnesses, wouldn't it?
So I'd look at a good question, and I looked into that, and I think so from memory there was a smaller loss in traffic notices that we attributed to the trial, but there was a decreasing trend in traffic notice and revenue as well. So I think we anticipated a decreasing trend in what we were going to get from traffic notices. So you can actually see that we took the budget down to 1.2, but we actually are forecasting 1.3, so we're somewhere between the two. So we anticipated that there would be a trend of decrease, and the actual hasn't quite got there. We've got more than what we anticipated. So every year we're just trying to guess based on the trends of what's happening.
Yeah, I don't really agree with that, because sad as it may seem, I still look at warrants of fitness and registrations as I walk around the place. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of change since a few years back. Basically then, what we've done for 10 months is we've lost about 1.3 million during this trial. Would that be correct?
Yep, that was roughly the loss in parking revenue that was accepted by council.
Okay. I also read there that on some streets your optimum is between 85 and 90% availability for parking, and yet there's some high demand streets which are getting up over the 85-90% as far as parking. And the complaint which I'm getting is now it's damn difficult to get a park in town. Are you getting that anecdotal evidence or not?
Yes, and the report actually deals with this. So what we're saying, if you look at the whole catchment of the central city, we're not optimising our parking stock. If you actually go to each of the precincts, the data would tell us we're not optimising that parking stock, but we do have streets within those precincts which are above the 85%, which is getting into that problem territory in terms of frustrating motorists because they can't get a park. But if they were prepared to walk, they could go somewhere else in that precinct and park. So this is the value of the data that we're getting. We also have some streets on the periphery of the central parking which are well underutilised. So what we are saying as a parking task force, with better data over the next year, we need to look at that and come up with some strategies to deal with both. For instance, John Purcell, our parking manager, has a view that some of the low occupancy streets that we should be looking at a change to the policy and charging for that, because commuters would want to use them, and we could probably get another $200,000 of revenue and optimise our revenue by looking at the strategies. It's going to be interesting what strategy we come up with our high value streets and what point in time we want to do something there, because the normal strategy is pricing, but that is the value of the trial that we're doing, to get the data so we can make informed decisions about what we do over the next 12 months. So from my perspective as staff, I don't think our data set is quite good enough to make those decisions. So our recommendation to the task force was to have it would be great to have another year of data, but clearly that's your decision.
Thanks. Martin, please.
Just a quick question if I have to go. The apps, and I'm thinking of more of a older profile like myself, what sort of work do you intend to do to promote that? Because obviously, the first 2 hours, excellent, but if you're at some meeting, rather than having to come and feed the meter, obviously after 2 hours for $6, which further behind or ahead than the old system, is to promote that app among a cross-section of people. What are we looking at doing to promote that app? I think that is quite an important convenience thing.
Yeah, I think the answer lies in the question that Councillor Ryan asked about the low usage of the app, because you don't actually have to positively do anything to get the 2 hours. But we certainly, if you did go to self-validation, there's all sorts of promotions that you could do through the app. So the only promotion we can do is really advertising the app. I don't know, Jason, have you got anything to add to that?
No. I mean, all right, but I hope, and really through City News, through all your means, because it seems to me, if I may, so as part of this very successful trial, that app I think is the take-up, because that adds an absolute convenience.
Yeah. Can I just add to that? I think there are some things in the app in terms of advanced information about where you can park, and we'd like to promote that part of the app in terms of the heat maps and for people using the apps to find out where the parks are in the city, and that's part answer to your streets that are over 85% as well, to be able to see before you come to see that Barton Street is really chocker, but you can park in this street just 1 or 2 streets away. Well, so there is value in promotion.
I've learned something. I'm very IT savvy. Thank you. Thank you.
Mark, please.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick questions, if I may. Page 81, point 51. I was a little bit unsure about this one. System reliability for validation and enforcement is also an issue. This is where we're talking about the teething problems, which would benefit from more time to improve. Manual processes for validation have been implemented. What does that mean? What are they? Because we talked about the validation a few meetings back, and what's this?
So this is basically around the reliability of the data that we get into the parking wardens' handhelds.
Yes.
So there's a bit of variability in it that we're just not comfortable with in terms of our target is to have validation or reliability rate of around 98%.
Yep, that's right.
And we're hovering around 90 to 95.
Okay.
So we're there or thereabouts, but that's something that we're just wanting to fine tune and improve. And we just need a little bit more time with the vendor to get that technology to the point where we've got that level of certainty going forward. So we do have some measures in place that we use in terms of manual checks that we have to do before we issue tickets.
Yep,
Or
okay.
infringements.
Yep.
Just until we've got that.
Oh, so this is to do with that business about between how long it takes you to, or how long it takes to basically issue a ticket by radioing back and getting the information back and...
Yep.
Right, thank you. Yeah, got that. Cool, okay. Chris, you mentioned something which made my ears perk up a little bit, and it's regards the table on page 84, the differences between option 1 and option 2. About the transition, so realistically, if we were to go back to the previous system or the CCTP, is that the right amount of letters? Yeah, system. I guess I'm asking you to make a bit of a marketing decision here, but would it simply be as simple as getting the straight revenue that we were getting, or would there be an ugly time between that would affect that number?
I think there'd be an interesting time between, and I think what we've found through the trial in terms of having the community understand what's going on has been extremely challenging.
Yep.
So one of the downsides of reverting back will be the re-education of the people back to the other system. So I think that drives us to a 3-month period to get some of the different technology right, but also to have a campaign of re-education to our public of we're reverting back to another system now and another method of payment. So we'll go through another period of churn and confusion, I think, as we do that. But that was always on the card if we change the trial.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. No, I'm more thinking of if I'm used to driving into town and parking for an hour and a half, no problems, going back and putting my $2 in, have you factored in the fact that people just, well, there's the confusion and there's perhaps resentment, I don't know.
When you say factored in, you mean as in our revenue,
in your revenue
productions? Yeah.
Yeah. You have? Okay, cool. How much life is left in those meters, by the way?
I'll get Jason to ask, but it's a bit like the tomahawk where you put a new
50
handle
more years out of those babies.
a new handle and a new head, and they keep on going. So
yeah, that's pretty much it. Like we source old Duncan meter heads like from Rotorua District Council, so we actually are sourcing bits and pieces or parts to keep our current stock running.
Yep.
So it's not a long-term solution going forward. So the use of sensors and other technology initiatives is where we're looking to head going forward with our parking activity.
So this is a slightly curious question. How many meters have we got, roughly?
150, about 850.
And if you could sell each one of those for $5 each. Okay, just putting a thought out there. Hey, there's one thing I noticed, and this is regards Leo's infringement question here, page 131. I'm just looking at an attachment for the top chart there. We're talking about parking infringements issued by month. It seems to be creeping back up. He says, ambitiously, just if you get there, page 131, the top one. March, what happened there? That was a bumper infringement month. What happened there?
So the general trend there is what you're seeing. We started the trial in October, and we deliberately went on a warning and a process and education. So we weren't ticketing. So we are now moving into enforcement. You're right in what happened in March. So Jason, tell him what happened in March.
Dave brought his trailer.
I'm not sure what the peak was there, but.
Oh, Evelisa's got something.
Come and help them, Evelisa.
And could we do it again?
Why did we get a peak there?
So in March, there was a concerted effort to look at the data that was being, with the new technology. So we were able to focus where parkers were parking over their time allocation or over 2 hours. So there was a concerted effort from the wardens to actually basically issue infringements for overstays And then there's also the other loading zone and other infringements or parking over driveways that were also issued.
Yeah. So I think we're,
Easter was a holiday.
I think we're, to some extent, we're still in the commissioning period. Like, the one thing that's apparent to us is that we're at the leading edge of technology here, and our technology is great and it's getting better, but I think we're still in a commissioning period and trying different things, and that's part of the reason for the extra 12 months trial as well, to just stabilise all of that. Like, the recent information coming from the technical team is really positive and where this is heading.
Yeah.
But I think that there's some fluctuations as we're just commissioning the system still.
I guess I was just interested in that particular march because, like you say, with a little bit concerted effort on that, you've suddenly got the biggest march you've had in years, and that's with the new system. So it was an interesting sign for me. I think that's all I've got. Thank you. I'll save the rest for debate.
Councillor Siggy.
Thank you so much for your report. Look, just a question is, so you didn't really push the app big time because of the first 2 hours free, so there wasn't really that important, because I just look on I just googled where to park in Hamilton and just parking in Hamilton, and there's no mention of an app anywhere. So, and to me that's, you know, I've got friends that actually told me they traveled to Tauranga, were so happy, get on the app, found a parking, you know, paid for it, and so on. So easy was just easy. And I do understand, well, our esteemed elder statesman isn't here anymore, that they do, you know, older people do have problems, and I have to say I'm a bit technology challenged too, but there's a lot more people going on apps and things like that. So is it in the pipeline that we're going to push that more, or not really?
We can have a look at this. I'm pretty sure it's on our website, so if you go to our website, you'll find it. So I take your point, you've Googled it, and
yeah, because people come from all over the place, and you know, and they start Googling.
Yep. So I've got Nigel sitting up behind me listening intently, so we'll certainly take that on board as we move forward, because it's to our advantage to get the uptake as best as possible in the app. Particularly the heat map, I think, is quite exciting for users.
Now I can't remember have we got the app on our old parking machines? Is there a signage for the app? I just haven't looked.
Yeah, so there is signage that refers to the Pay My Park app.
Okay.
There is. The biggest issue I think we're finding is that because for the ease of convenience for the public, they don't have to do anything. A lot of them are unaware of the Pay My Park unless you're wanting to stay the 30 hour onwards. And so the functionality around like the heat map is lost. And so that's something that we're just looking to repackage and see what we can do about promoting that better going forward. Yeah,
that's really important, isn't it, for the future, because we might not want to be with free parking forever. So we you know, that's something we really should be pushing a lot harder now. That's just my thoughts. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. That's the end of questions then. So we're back to the...
Move the staff recommendation, Dave.
And noting, councillors, that when you're with Jeff's motion, part B equates to option 1. So is there a seconder for that? Councillor Bunting? Yep. Okay. Are there speakers to this? Jeff first, thanks.
Mr. Chair. I'm very happy to move this recommendation, and I do so buoyed by the fact that despite 2 hours free in the CBD being something of an experiment, something of a little left field and with some challenges with its implementation initially, the trial has been successful. 2 hours free has made an impact in the city. It's made an immediate difference in my view. The retailers who are paying a share of it like it, and the public like it. You'll all be familiar with the saying, if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. And I think it's a credit to this council, to its leadership through Mayor Andrew and through the incredibly hard-working staff under Chris Allen. We've tried something completely new. We've gone out of our comfort zone. We've applied new technology in a new way. And in doing so, we took a chance. Through that process and through the council's very good decision to install sensors in the CBD, we've achieved 3 things in my view. We've made clear improvements in parking occupancy in the CBD. We've made a real difference, I believe, to the public perception of parking in the CBD in a very short time, and we've got ourselves access to superb data which gives a clear roadmap on how this plan can develop parking in the CBD over the next year or so. That last point is an important one. I want to emphasise that this is only an early stage in the journey. We're learning more as we go, and by taking the sort of clean slate approach that we have, and through the wisdom of the previous council and investing in the sensors, we will over the next year be in a terrific position to tweak the way we manage parking in the CBD to get the very best results for the city. The key point I would ask councillors to bear in mind is the reason we brought in this trial, its objective, as a tool to try and help revitalise the CBD. That's what was behind it, and we were quite explicit about that. Central to that aim was lifting on-street parking occupancy in the CBD towards 85%. Occupancy rates across the CBD, the key metric for this trial, have increased. As you'll see on page 79, more vehicles are using on-street parks in the CBD more often. It's that simple. There's no sleight of hand here, that's what the figures are saying. Average occupancy in the CBD has risen by 9% since the trial started, only 8% on average away from that perfect sweet spot that we're aiming for. We divided the CBD into 4 precincts, and across all of those on page 88, you can see a strong growth in parking occupancy since the month the trial was implemented. In the Northern Precinct, 7% increase, the Barton Precinct, 8% increase, Civic, 10%, and Southern, 23%. The feedback from retailers through the Central Business Association is positive, and remember, these are the guys who are helping to pay for this. As as Chris said earlier, a survey of members showed 88% support it. That's not too bad. And the public, they like it. A survey of more than 500 parkers in the CBD showed 92% thought it was a good idea. The trial was never about recouping parking revenue. It was always accepted that parking revenue would fall significantly. The emphasis was this: are we trying to recover costs here, or are we trying to encourage people into the CBD? Absolutely, there is a loss in parking revenue. It's no, you know, quite upfront about that. It's factored into the LTP. And do we need to subsidise it? Yes, we do. But in my view, it's a price that's infinitely worth paying. It wasn't that many years ago that we had a deputy mayor who was labelling the CBD a dead duck. You'll remember Councillor Chesterman saying that. Well, that's not the case anymore. There's a number of measures that have contributed to its improvement, some generated by the council, many just natural through the business community. But 2 hours free has played its part. I always argued that part of the secret to success with parking in the CBD was to change perceptions, to make people feel good about parking in the CBD, to make them feel good about the CBD. And we're well on our way, folks. So I'm proud of the fact that 2 hours free in the CBD has been a success. It's given us a roadmap for the future, and it's changed that very hardest thing that there is to change, public perception. So I urge councillors to have the courage to continue this journey. The trial has proved what can be done in a very short time, but the best rewards are yet to come. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Angela, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Chair. Very well said by Councillor Taylor, and he's clearly done a lot of work on this project. However, it won't come as a surprise to him that I will be voting against this, not because I don't have courage, but because actually as a principal, and I guess through the many, many trials that I've been involved in since I've been on council, I believe that the best way to manage parking is through price management, to be able to respond to busy events and things like that. I'm not at all surprised that 90% of people who responded to the survey said, yes, we love free parking. And as I said in my questions, yes, they would love a free lunch as well. Question 10 was in the survey asked if free parking brought them into the CBD more often, and 70% of them said no, it didn't. And a rough anecdotal calculation of that are those people that said no, it didn't already visit the CBD daily or several times a week. More businesses have moved into the city, and that's been happening for the past several years. We've got more employees in the city. The Genesis building is open. So there's a lot of residential development. People are starting to live in the CBD. This has been going on for probably the last 2 to 3 years, long before the free parking trial has occurred. Councillor Taylor is right. It's not just about the cost. I accept that. But as I said, I believe through a lot of experience and through trials from other councils that the very best way to manage parking in a central city that is premium parking in the city is through price management. This does come as a cost of $1.1 million. And we're going to be facing some tough decisions this week and next week. So that's an $11 million commitment in this budget. If I was convinced that that was the best way to manage parking in the central city, then I would be supportive of that. However, I'm not. I think that one of the most frustrating things for me is our city, our city is not unique. Many cities around the world and around New Zealand have done these kinds of trials before, and unfortunately they have not contributed to the vibrancy of the central city. Anecdotally, of course, the businesses are going to say, yes, I support this, please keep it because it's free. Customers are going to say, yes, it's great because it's free, but the data in here from the survey tells me that the people using those spaces are saying it's not bringing us in any earlier. I do commend the working group for the work that they have done on here, and certainly the passion that Councillor Taylor has had for this project, and he still certainly believes in it. But for those reasons, and primarily around the principle that I hold, which is that I believe the best way to manage central city premium parking is through price management, I will not be supporting the trial any further.
Thanks, Councillor Leo.
Yeah, of course people love anything which is free. You give them a pen and they think it's great. You give them a free muffin or whatever with a coffee, and that's marvellous too. But we've already read today that 85% we've hit, and this is causing some congestion within our city, which is leading to frustration of the motorists, which of course leads to crashes. Parking, the offer of this is 8 a.m. to 8 p.m, which is a 12-hour period. When we look at the 16-17 period, we were only operating half of that, which was free before 9 and free after 3. So we were not really comparing apples with apples here. The other thing, of course, is in the 16-17 period, we were only charging $2 an hour for parking, whereas now, after the 2 hours, you've got to pay $6 an hour. So how we ever arrived at the deficit in the parking meters of $760,972, I would have thought that with the increase in the parking per hourly rate, that we would have been at least on a par or above that. This morning we heard that 43% of the retail spend here in the city is spent on alcohol and food. Well, I, for one, am not prepared to actually subsidise anybody to go and drink and eat. What I think we really need to do, of course, is the ratepayers out there have been asked now to subsidise possibly a train to Auckland, possibly central city parking, gardens, and I think that the ratepayers have really had enough of being asked to subsidise. If I want to park in the city, I'm quite prepared to pay, and I would recommend that we go back to $2 an hour, scrub the trial, and I will be voting against this motion.
Thanks, Leo. Councillor Mark.
Thank you. As seconder of the motion, it's probably going to be no surprise I'll vote for it. I just want to extend the train of thought that Councillor O'Leary was taking there, saying that the only way to manage parking in the CBD is through price. So I hope I haven't misquoted you, Angela, there, but that's basically what you're saying, yeah. And yet I would contest that the most recent change we had before this was we actually gave away 18 hours of our parking. We were free before 9 and free after 3. And if you are going to exact price management as your only tool, and we did go back to, as Leo suggested, $2 an hour, and you wanted to at the CBD, the only way you can change that is by going down, and you can't go much lower than $2 an hour. When I arrived on council just over a year ago, a year and a half ago, I asked about how the parking system worked, and I was quite appalled. A quarter of what we brought in was through meters, a quarter of what we brought in was through off-street parking, and just over a half of our entire parking revenue was from infringements, people getting it wrong. So our system was devised, or it was dependent on people getting the wrong. And we wondered why we had a perception problem. The CBD was crying out. All the dialogue was about, we'll only shop at the base because it's free. We're only going to go to Chartwell because it's free parking. So the CBD didn't have a competitive offer. We were also, as Councillor Taylor talked about, trying to come up with a service rather than a toll. We wanted to provide value with regards parking rather than just a tolled experience. Councillor Taylor talked earlier on and said too, by the way, this is not the final solution. I agree, this isn't the final solution. But when we're talking about mechanisms to be able to alter behaviour, we've now got two levers, one that we didn't have before. We've got the pricing lever, which we can change, but we also have the time lever, which we can change. And with our technology, that will help. So therefore, if we want to, for example, we want to manage more traffic out of Barton Street, which is oversubscribed at the moment, to less than a block away in Harwood Street, which is frighteningly empty, it's very simple. We'll be able to reduce the free offering in Barton Street and increase the free offering in Harwood Street if we need to change behaviour. So we do have that lever, and I'd be very nervous if we got rid of that free parking offer, because it is in fact a lever for the future. Yep, it's a costly one at the moment, but the signs are that is getting a lot better. In the future, I see variable free parking offers all over the place. I see no fines, just charges. Once we get the number plate recognition in, we'll be able to actually just automatically start charging you at the end of your free offering. And Siggy, I think that's when the app will come into its own. The app, a dog, we'd be the first to admit it at the moment, because it hasn't really been needed as much as we thought it would be. And yep, the heat map part of it is really cool, but when you've got 2 hours free parking, you don't really have the impetus to go and get an app to pay with. But again, if we start in the future tampering with the free offering, which we only can do if we keep this trial, that's when the app will become useful. So we've thrown the ball a bit far ahead, I believe, with the app at this stage, but it's here, and it's okay. So I also would warn that if we go back to the previous system, it is going to be archaic, and to my mind, it is going to be draconian, and we're taking more than just one step back. It will be worse than it was before. It is, you talk to my teenage daughter as a prime example. She said, Dad, this is one of the coolest things that the council has ever done. And yeah, Leo, you're right. You give someone something for free, they're going to love it. But they're getting something free in the CBD. They're getting something cool in the CBD. And this is, it's been a long time since I've heard sort of positive feedback about the CBD. So I would anticipate we keep going, we keep the courage. I think the dollars are going to keep going up, and the bravery will pay off.
Thank you, Mark. Siggy, please.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Look, I do commend Councillor Taylor and his task force. They have worked hard. I do appreciate that. They really wanted to make this work, and it's great seeing the numbers here. And just like everybody else said, if you get a free lunch, of course you'll take it. Talking about Barton Street, actually, I'm from the west side. You might have noticed Hamilton West. Most people come from Hamilton West and park in the city. So I used to do that too, with 3 children in tow. And Barton Street was always full. Even if you had to pay, it was always full. So that hasn't changed much. But really the numbers don't stack up. And like Councillor O'Leary said, there's more businesses and more people have moved into the city, and that's probably caused some of that increase that we are seeing in the city, which is really, really exciting, increase in the cars, which is not so exciting, but it is exciting that there's more happening in the city. So what I would like to see, I don't believe we're going back into the dark ages like Councillor Bunting sees us going. I really don't believe that because when you look at other cities like Tauranga, they're making it happen with technology, with the apps. Maybe we're just a bit slow on that, but we can catch up. And we've got amazing people working here in the council, and they can catch up. I know that. I totally believe in them. And that's really just my answers for that. I won't vote. I will vote against the continuation of the parking trial. I was for it when it came in first, but just for me, the numbers don't stack up. So yeah, I'll be voting against it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan.
Thanks. I'll cut straight to the chase. With regard to Councillor Siggy's comment about Tauranga, to be fair, their CBD's probably never been called a dead duck. So I don't know if we're comparing apples with apples or ducks with ducks, but whatever. An interesting thing which I think is fair to raise is we've had the CBD remission on DCs. And I would wonder the hundreds of thousands of dollars which we've subsidised for that to stimulate CBD growth. And in some ways, this parking thing was designed to do the same thing, to stimulate CBD growth. Has it been effective? Yes. Are we phasing out the CBD remission? It's to be decided, but essentially we are over a to be confirmed time, but that could be 2 years or 4 years. So should we throw the baby out with the bathwater this trial? I think not.
Thanks. We've had ducks and babies. Any advance on that? Councillors, I've put myself in the speaking order now before going to Jeff's right of reply. I'd like to thank Jeff for his initiative and the others who support them. He's brought that duck back to life, given it some mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, perhaps, if you can stand the analogy. Actually, like Councillor Leary, I think one of the best tools for parking is price management, very much here. And I think we've got the price management exactly right here. The price management is that it's zero. And that has encouraged people to come here. Unlike Councillor Leary, my glass is half full, whereas hers is half empty, though, because she's worried about the 70% that said, of the people surveyed who said they come in anyway into the city and it hasn't changed their behaviour. I'm thinking, hell's teeth, we've got 30% of the people who answered said they will come into the city more often because of this policy. That's my half full glass. I actually think the numbers do stack up, because even a budget that we've got in front of us, the LTP budget, we're going to get, according to staff figures provided today, that they're confident will continue and it will come out of their pay. If it doesn't, we're going to get $2.1 million extra over 10 years income over and above the budget. So even with the free parking, we're going to be doing better financially than we said. We know we're doing better commercially because we've got more people coming to town. We know that more people are coming to town because of that, and because of other things like the one that Ryan mentioned. This is actually not for a permanent free parking. This is simply for another 12 months worth of figures and stats. That's what you're actually voting on today. I think, you know, if the figures didn't stack up in another 12 months, there may be trouble getting a vote like this through. But at the moment, it's early. It's too early. The figures are telling us that it's too early to tell for sure. Just one point on Councillor Leo's statement about the subsidy for the CBD. People are getting sick of subsidising. They are to a certain extent. So look where the real subsidies are going in terms of shopping centres. We have hugely subsidised the base and Chartwell by not having capital value rates on them by hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to each of those. That has enabled those two shopping centres, more than any others, to provide free parking and to actually advertise and promote their own because parking is free out there. And that was one of the drivers to make us look at how we could possibly do the same in the CBD to even up the uneven playing field. If we had been rating them properly from the start, maybe they would have been putting parking charges in there as well. They have been hugely subsidised because of the rating system we have. And they are the ones that are squealing like stuck pigs because we're proposing we change it. And not for, for good reason. I would if I were in their shoes as well. I would want to keep that subsidy the ratepayers have been providing me all that time. So I think this is a bit of an evener-upper. It's not a breaker-upperer like the film that's on at the moment, which is quite a good film, by the way. You should go and see it. But I do think this deserves another 12 months to firm up whether it's working or not, whether it's what we want to do long term. Thanks. Jeff, you're right to reply. Thanks.
Come up with a movie or a duck.
All for your comments. Councillor O'Leary, I hear what you're saying, and I don't think we're that far apart on some of those things there. I think ultimately price management may well be a way to go in areas, but my view is that first we needed to change the perception, because my view was that the perception was pretty filthy about parking in the CBD. All we ever heard was about the base and Chartwell. And that was a big problem that I feel we had to confront first, and I think we've done that and it's worked. Bedding in for another year, I think will consolidate that good feeling, and I think, as Chris Allen said, there will be room for bringing in price sensitivity. There may be areas like your Harwood streets and some of those northern streets that are a bit empty at the moment where we make it a commuter area. So I think there is potential for that, but sorry, you're right. But breaking that perception was the first thing we needed to do. Councillor Leo, appreciate your experience. You throw off a little bit about the fact that it's free, so of course they're going to love it. Well, what's wrong with them feeling good about parking in the CBD? With actually making them feel good and wanting to be there. I do feel that punitive kind of regime, that the entrenched sort of thinking about parking that previous councils have had is the very reason why they failed for so many years on this issue. The fact that it's difficult in some areas to find a park now because occupancy is going up. Well, how the heck is that a negative? I mean, would we rather go back to the time where you could shoot a cannon down the main street and not hit anybody? I mean, I think it's a great thing. And as the trial proceeds, we'll get to a stage where we introduce some measures, but we're getting more people in. Isn't that what we wanted? Siggy, numbers don't stack up. I don't think that statement stacks up. When you look at the overall downstream impact of a revitalised CBD, the financial benefits, higher property values for this council for rate payment does stack up, and I think there are extra revenue opportunities ahead of us now that we're here. As I mentioned, as Chris mentioned, we can bring in some price sensitivity. We can start charging, eventually, we can start charging people to park, commuters to park in certain areas. We can bring in more revenue. But to me, I think the numbers absolutely do stack up, and I think the trial absolutely stacks up, and I urge councillors to give it another year. Thank you.
Councillors, we move to the vote by the board. Thanks. They're working on it. Just wait. Oh, well, my casting vote is in favour of the resolution, since the board's not working for that. You can add that then, thanks.
The motion is carried.
It says stop voting and the operator decides.
Yeah, so the motion is carried.
Okay.
He's used his casting vote.
Okay, the vote is carried, 6 votes to 5. Thank you, everyone. We're moving on to the next item. Oh, yeah. Sorry, 5 minutes tea break. Thanks. We're coming to the thrilling speed limit bylaw section, which Robin has been waiting all day for. And it's items 10 and 11. We decided in the agenda confirmation we're going to take them together. And councillors, can I please implore you all to lift your head above the details a little bit, look at it strategically, don't ask questions about particular street corner or why a sign looks the way it does or something like that. Let's get on to the really important issues, like dinner tonight and hoping to get home for it and things like that. Okay, Robin, Robin's going to give an explanation of how this stuff works again for the umpteenth time this year and why we've got two different parts and that sort of stuff.
Thank you, Councillor Dave. So if I talk in general about the bylaw process, so I'm not going to talk about speed limit process as such. I'll just wait for Councillor Miller.
Yep.
Right, Gary? Right, good. So the bylaw process. So the bylaw process is set under the Local Government Act 2002. And basically it needs to work through a number of steps. The first is to consider the issue and to determine if it's an issue that should be involved with managing. So in this case, the issue's speed limits, and we have determined that yes, it is an issue that council needs to be involved with, and that a bylaw is the best way of dealing with it, because that's actually set out in the Land Transport Act setting of speed limits. So the legislation actually says that council, in its role as a road controlling authority, has to have a bylaw to set speed limits. So that's basically the item 10, is this an issue that council should be involved with, and is a bylaw the best way of dealing with the issue? So that's the first part that council needs to deal with for any bylaw. And so basically that's item 10, And then we climb into the, okay, so now we're going to write a bylaw, and we have to go through and check that the bylaw doesn't contravene any of the Human Rights Act requirements. And in the case of speed limits, again, it's all set out in legislation as to what we're working through. So we've determined that there isn't a conflict with the Human Rights Act, and we have presented a draft bylaw for consideration and a statement of proposal. So that statement of proposal basically is a way of going out and formally consulting with the public about what we're proposing with the bylaw. And that makes up the bulk of item 11. Today we have two things that we're looking at. Law. One is a proposed change to the speed limit on Gordonton Road, and that's changing it from 80 k's to 60 k's from the Wairere Drive roundabout through to north of Thomas Road intersection. And that's to recognise the safety issues we've been having there and to work in with the project that Andrew talked to you about this morning, which is the intersection improvements for Thomas and Gordonton intersection. The other part that we are looking to do through this process, and probably is the more significant part, is to change the way we set speed limits moving forward. So currently we have to work through and change the bylaw each time, which is doing that determination report and going through the full process. The proposal through this bylaw change is to enable speed limits to be changed by resolution. So that will enable us to work through the hearings, Regulatory and Hearings Committee, through Councillor Angela's committee, and to do those changes by resolution. We will still need to do consultation on any proposed changes. Consultation is set out in the speed limits rule. The intention is, as part of this process, as parallel to this process, is that we're going to develop a speed management plan, and that will be the opportunity to work with all of the councillors and the community to get those lists of streets where you would like us to look at different speed limits, where you would like us to look at things like traffic calming and education and all those sorts of things, and that will be bundled up in a parallel piece of work for the speed management plan. So on that basis, I'm happy to answer any questions.
About both reports, page 132 and 136, the two reports start. We'll deal with the motions on them separately afterwards, but I've got Councillor James first.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Robin. Just one question. What is the time frame for the amendment to come into effect, or the bylaw to come into effect?
So we're looking for the bylaw to come into effect about, I think it was the 10th of October. So that gives us enough time, once we've gone to full council on the 6th of September, to then do any changes out on site. So we're ready for the unveiling. We also legally have to give 1 month notice to the NZTA and the New Zealand Police of that change coming into effect. So mid-October.
Thank you, and thank you for your good work.
Thanks. Gary, thanks.
Thank you. So just to clarify some confusion in my mind, we already had a bylaw doing this. The law requires that we have to confirm that is still the best option. So that's, okay, so just putting words in the paragraph 7, the first step required in the bylaw review process is determine if a bylaw is still the most, that would have made it easier. So in my own mind, that makes it clearer as to what we are doing.
Yes.
So, okay. And then, so that's the first thing.
Yes.
And then we then go into the nitty-gritty with the second bit.
Yes,
Okay,
correct.
thank you. That just clarifies the process a lot more for me.
Thanks very much. Councillor Mark.
So just following on from James's question earlier on there about the timing, and I guess, so this is the reason that we may be retrospectively asking for support from, you say, keep getting the acronym wrong.
NZTA.
NZTA, thank you. Is that right? This is...
No, so the speed limit process is separate to the actual project itself.
Right.
So the Gordonton Thomas project, the reason why we might need to ask for retrospective funding in that case is because NZTA are not likely to have finalised their approved program until
Oh,
about
right.
September, October.
Got it.
So it's just there's always a bit of a lag for a new 3-year period.
I understand.
So that's where the funding tied up with that particular one.
So the difference with this being we change speed limit by resolution rather than by law each time, is that right? Will that essentially be a much quicker process than it was before?
Yes. So the idea is through the speed management plan is to develop a program of speed management work, which involves the education, promotion, engineering work and speed limit changes. Develop a program for 3 years, which we can then roll out through the discretionary transport program. And as and when we're ready to go, we can just do consultation.
Yep.
And take that through Councillor Angela's committee.
The regulatory.
So that would mean that we can turn around something as quickly as a couple of months, probably.
Wow, that's great.
Particularly enables us to deal with those situations where something unforeseen has come upon us. So
Right.
dealing with those safety issues, dealing potentially with a new school coming in that you can't necessarily plan for, but you need to be able to respond.
Right, and it's all, obviously, you've done the work on the LGA to make sure it's
Yes.
all cool.
Yes.
Great.
Thanks very much. Okay, we'll move to the vote. On the first one on page 132, I'll move that, seconded by James. Any discussion on that? If not, show of hands in favour. Against, that's carried unanimously. Thanks. Page 136, I'll move that again, seconded by Leo. Thanks. Any discussion on that? If not, I'll put that again to a show of hands. Those in favour? Against, that's carried. Thanks. Both unanimous, so that's good. We knocked out 2 there. Thanks very much, Robin.
Thank you.
We have to get you back that quick. Now, Chris here is doing the Waste, Storm and Water Renewal Contracts Award. 211 page. Thanks, councillors.
Cool. Good afternoon, councillors. I'm Chris Barton from the City Infrastructure Unit. So this report seeks approval to award contracts to deliver planned renewals of the city's stormwater, wastewater and water networks. So this is a core infrastructure, business as usual type delivery for our infrastructure networks. So, in order to deliver the program, it has been split into 2 works packages, one for stormwater and wastewater, one for water networks. Both the contracts are for a 3-year period. They've both been through a public tender process. Just to be clear, these are contracts to enable physical works delivery, so they don't commit any budgets. They're just delivery mechanisms in order to deliver works as required, subject to confirmation of budget provisions, which Council will continue to work through. So, based on that, happy to take any questions.
Okay, I've got Gary first, thanks.
Thank you very much. Just on the comment you just said then, I was going to ask you, so we have a budget already set for this, do we?
So this...
And this is just the expediting of that budget, so we're going to get you guys to do it.
Yeah, so this is just a delivery mechanism to get geared up for delivery of works which are planned to be undertaken over the next 3 years, subject to 10-year plan budget decisions. So, so this doesn't commit any budgets. It's just a delivery. It's been procured based on the provisions within the draft 10-year plan.
So those budgets will be confirmed if and when the 10-year plan is confirmed.
Correct.
So that's when we okay. So presumably, if projects get pulled out, some of these figures could reduce or could increase.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're seeking to set a contract sum, again, that's separate to budget and funding provisions. So again, there's work flexibility within the contract to scale works up or scale works down depending on budget requirements.
Okay, so we've got a draft budget for these works. Just one thing that concerns me slightly is page 112, paragraph 15. There was only one tender received, and you've gone through a robust evaluation. So presumably the tender came in within the budget.
Yes. So
Can you say, like, the tender, can you tack that to some, what do you call them, these CE numbers? You tack the tender to those numbers, don't you?
yeah, so in development of the works scope for the tender package, we develop an engineer against that, and that tender price came in within that engineer's estimate. Again, the tender package is developed up from a list of sites. Again, this is about renewing pipes largely, and so you get a...
So let me be clear, so from a bunch of guys who know nothing about, well,
Yep.
I see about pipes and grounds or roads and things like that, and what they should cost, we can have some comfort that the objective, dispassionate people in our staff, who are not getting backhanders from contractors, etc., have said what they think they should cost. The tender actually came in under the cost, so that should give us some comfort that we're getting value for money.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. It's unfortunate we didn't get any other tenders. Is that just the state of the market at the moment, is it? Everyone's flat out?
I think it potentially is an indication of the current market. It also is an indication of the nature of the works, I think, as well. It is a...
quite specialised,
it is a little bit specialised, but yeah, again, it is an indication, I think, of the market as a whole at the moment of work. Yeah, there is a lot going on at the moment, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Siggy, please.
Okay, thank you so much. Following on from Councillor Mallett, to us normally, when there's maybe a private time, how many tenders would we normally get for something like that?
Again,
I mean,
it's hard to say. Generally, we'd hope for 3 to 4 in some contracts. Again, it depends on the timing. It depends on the scale and scope of the work. So, yeah, there are. Yeah, I guess that's an indication.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's fine. The other question I have got is, okay, they've come in with their proposal of how much it would cost. Will we keep them to it, or is there a number that they can go over but not any further? Or
yeah. So within their tender submission, there's rates against certain types of work. So with delivery of the works moving forward, the delivery would be for the rates as they're submitted at the time of tender. And again, we've gone and reviewed that against existing rates within our existing contracts and also against the estimates that we developed for the contract package as a whole. So,
okay.
So yes, those rates would be fixed. It's not a...
Okay, so we can be assured it's not going to go over by 1, 2, 3 million, whatever number, any number.
Correct.
Yeah, cool, awesome. Thank you. That's all.
Okay, thanks very much. Look, we'll move to the recommendation, which I'll move. Have I got a seconder? Jeff got in there. Thanks. Any discussion? If not, I'll put that to a show of hands. Those in favour, raise their hands. Against? Good, thanks. That's carried unanimously. Thanks very much there, Chris. Councillors, we're moving to Blair's thing, Waikato means business, or the Regional Economic Development Agency, and other alphabet soups. Blair, sorry, that's on page 216.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I think given that you recently received a presentation on the Regional Economic Development Agency, the Project Director, Harvey Brooks, and the current Chair of the Establishment Group, Dallas Fisher, I think you've probably received a lot of information on this. Apart from just a couple of quick things, I am on the Establishment Board of the Economic Development Agency. The Establishment Board has been established to set this entity up, and we will be ended later this year once a new board is in place. And so part of that process will be the Establishment Board working to formally appoint the new board and also to appoint a full-time Chief Executive. So that's part of the establishment process. Today's report is seeking a couple of matters. One is to release a payment of $90,000 towards the establishment costs, and that follows an earlier resolution of Council. And secondly, to delegate to the Chief Executive to go away and negotiate the service level agreement relating to the 3-year $140,000 per year commitment to the Economic Development Agency. Of course, no that the monies for that is part of the long-term plan discussions to be conducted. So happy to take questions.
Thanks, Angela. I was going to come to you first anyway, but you remember. Yes. So Angela has discussed with the CEO an amendment to the motion in 4 there on page 216. Do you want to go through that, Angela?
Yes, that's just, committee members, it's just a change to D, and that'll go up on the board. I'm just changing the intent of, because D says delegates to the Chief Executive to negotiate and execute the 3-year partnership. I want that, I'm happy for the Chief Executive to negotiate that service level agreement, but I want final sign-off to come back to Council, and that was always my intent back in December, I think, when this was first raised, for the motion to finally come through. So,
Yeah. Sorry, hang on. The board's not working
and then I have
at the moment, so I'm going to read it out. I've got it here. And you just check that it's what you had, Angela. Oh, it's come up. There we are. Point D there. Excellent.
Councillor O'Leary, if I can be helpful with this, because I was going to come up with something similar to that, but one thing I was worried about is in all the discussions we had about this previously, I asked the question of the Chief Executive is, will we be able to review it year by year, you know, and not lock it in for a 3-year commitment? So if it came back every 3 years...
Well, look, hang on. So I don't want this in the middle of the meeting. Why don't you stand in the corner and discuss that while I do the other questions, then we'll come back and see if you've... I won't come to the speeches and without waiting for you, okay? Is that right, Angela? Yeah, good, thanks. Well, you can come back, we'll go to Siggy now.
I just want to know what report back to Council for approval.
That would be the intention.
Okay, well, it needs to have the words for approval.
We'll come to that too, yep.
So can that be put up there now?
Yeah, hold that thought.
Yep.
Siggy's question.
I do have a question. I have a really good one. How much will the CEO be paid?
That's I don't know. That will be established through an appropriate market process. It's obviously...
That's frightening.
Look, I don't know the figure.
Okay. Okay. Can we, hear from that as soon as possible?
So, Gary's thing is up there pro forma at the moment until we get Angela back.
400,000.
Won't be that.
Are there any other questions?
you sent me away.
All right, firstly, can I ask you a question? Is the for approval bit in red? That all right?
Yes, Councillor Hamilton also.
Done?
Yep.
Can be
So,
black.
thanks, Blair. Question on page 222. So you're on the establishment board.
Yes. Sorry, what page?
Page 221.
Yep.
Now, under the objections and functions, which is 2.2, halfway down the page, in the shaded box there, the Roman numerals 1 to 3, these are sort of high-level objectives. They're fairly lightweight, in my opinion. They're more outcomes than anything else. So, being on the establishment board, will you make those decisions around the overall strategy for what the Economic Development Agency needs to achieve, and the constitution and the goals and all of those kinds of things? Because I do think those are outcomes of a bigger picture.
Yeah, so I think there's two parts. One is the strategy that the Economic Development Agency responds to is not set by the Economic Development Agency itself. So if there is a Waikato Economic Development Strategy, that will be set by some other entity. So at the moment, there is a Waikato Means Business Economic Development Strategy, so READER will respond to that. These are, as you say, very high level. The board will work to refine these and set these, and then there'll be a more detailed business plan that then responds to those, Angela.
Okay, so I guess the answer is that it will come in the future as a business plan that will set the direction, because I mean every economic agency around the world should be achieving those three things as business as usual.
Correct, and then the business plan will then have very specific targets, and those will be what's contained in the service level agreement that pertains to Hamilton.
I guess I'm just flagging that in terms of the overall direction. I mean, are they going to do standard things that everybody else does? Are they going to take the unique positioning of the Waikato region, which is agriculture, dairy and all of those things, and make the most of those, to be unique as an EDA. Like, these are questions that I'll still have, but you're telling me that they will be answered at some point in the future through a business plan that will direct the
Correct, and I think your second answer is probably more the direction, Angela.
Yeah.
That clearly there'll be some things where we are missing out from a national approach, and there's some things that need to be done, but there are a number of uniquely Waikato elements that need to be promoted and actioned.
Yeah. On page 224, under the governance of the proposed governance of the Economic Development Agency, in the last paragraph there it says the Mayoral Forum will be invited at an appropriate time to nominate 2 people.
Yes.
So those 2, and over the page it talks about the number of being 5 or 9.
Yes.
Which 7 is around the optimal for a board.
Yes.
But those 2 seats that the Mayoral Forum will nominate will come off those numbers. So they'll be set aside, and the rest would be through public nomination. So why is that?
So the Mayoral Forum and I guess local government are still a substantial funder of the reader, and so the ability for local government through the Mayoral Forum to nominate 2 representatives, noting those 2 representatives would not be local government employees or elected members, they would be in a sense, it gives local government a chance to have a voice in terms of who's on the board of the government.
And will those nominations then move into the public process, or will they just be voted around the Mayoral table board?
They will be the Mayoral Forum to directly appoint.
So directly appoint, okay.
And so the other 5 will be initially established by the establishment board following a public nominations process, so request for recruitment process, I should say. And the board will be staggered so that there is a rotation cycle in place for the board. So the board, people can start for a maximum of 3 years, and we will initially with a bit of a staggered start, but after 3 years there'll be a full rotation. So every 3 years you have to step on and go through a process again to get back on.
Yeah, so that was a follow-up question. So that would include the chair, and that would include the nominated spots from the Mayoral Forum as well.
All of the members, correct.
Well, yeah, I think that's really good governance practice. Just my last question, on page 225, down the bottom again, it says that to ensure all councils are kept informed about the progress and performance of the Economic Development Agency, there will be an update the Waikato Mayoral Forum on a 6-monthly basis. There's nothing in there to indicate that it will come to council formally, and that was something that Councillor Bunting just chatted to me about, wanting not only an annual report into this council, which I'm going to be expecting to see in a service level agreement, because with respect, the Mayoral Forum is funded by the councils, which is funded by ratepayers, so there has to be some accountability back to us.
Look, I'd quite agree, and I would absolutely expect the service level agreement would have appropriate reporting for councils, which would include a comprehensive annual report and etc. So that we're yet to specify exactly how that will look, Angela, but I think it's trying to strike a balance between the reader having to appear at 11 councils regularly and find an efficient way to get information through to all the key stakeholders. But certainly, at a minimum, I would expect a very comprehensive report as a result of the service level agreement.
So this is not a CCO then?
This is not a CCO. No, it's been deliberately set up to be not a CCO. So a trust will be settled by 2 people. That trust will be the sole owner of the company, and there will be no councils will not have an ability to control nor have any ownership of this entity, which keeps it as not a CCO.
Well, they may have the ability because they're putting in $140,000, so I think could be a bit of control.
Yeah, they have certainly a substantial funding portion, although you look at the budget, the budget's $2 million approximately, about $700,000 comes from local government from that. The balance comes from Callaghan, government grants or business. So.
Okay. Councillor Mark?
No, okay. Thanks, Ed,
okay.
second.
So, sorry, councillors, before we continue, I move a time extension, which I will do until 10 p.m. tonight. Well, that's how the rate we're going, isn't it, at the moment? 9:30, all right. No, 5:15. 5:15, seconded there. Any advance on that? No. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. 15. Marty. No comments, because we've Jesus, Martin. There was nothing on the list before, and you put up. I asked for a seconder. You put up your hand. You're seconding it. Okay. Please get on the board early, guys, not late. Quick. What's your question?
I don't have a question. I have the debate.
Well,
I wait for the debate.
Gary, were you debating as well?
No, I have just a couple of questions.
Yeah, quick.
Okay, so we've got a whole lot of nice platitudes, nice with all due respect. In real terms, how does this differ from what Jason Cargo and all of the local authorities have someone, and Jason's not a man by, not, he works with a group of people, I assume, he's not the only one in that group, but he's the one I have the most visibility of. It's like, all we can really do is give favouritism to people.
Gary, your question?
I'm asking, what is it going to do other than give favouritism to other people, remove a few blocks in our district plan that someone couldn't do, get something done quicker than the normal person could do going through this. Get subsidies from, or provide subsidies to guys. It just doesn't strike me. I've seen these things before and they never really perform.
Yeah, so
I haven't seen them
just
before.
let him answer the first question before you get on to the speech, please.
So I think it's certainly not replacing what Jason and Vaughan Henry do. That's a very different role. I mean, their role is very much working at the coalface in a Hamilton context with developers and bits and pieces. The Economic Development Agency is working on a national scale to make sure that the Waikato's proposition, not only Hamilton, but the Waikato's proposition from an economic sense is well understood nationally. We are woefully inadequate on a national scale in terms of money that we're getting from the government and other entities in terms of economic funding. The government have got their $1 billion fund, the Shane Jones Fund. This is going to be a really important vehicle to help our region get access to that fund. One of the early initiatives is going to be a summit in August that the Economic Development Agency is going to convene with looking to invite around about 300 really key stakeholders to focus in on areas of opportunity initiatives that we are just not...
So who would those stakeholders be?
Oh, large business, small business, key influencers in terms of government agencies, there'll be local government, there'll be a range of, I guess, influential business people who are influential in an economic sense to basically identify the opportunities that can be pursued that we're not pursuing collectively as a sub-region or as a region. And I think when you look at the reports that have been received both around the Merrill Forum and others by Martin Jenkins, who did a lot of work, it just shows that that we are not punching at the level we should be in terms of the Waikato. There are huge opportunities that we're not taking advantage of. We need an agency that will help us capture those advantages.
Aren't we in the middle of historical great growth?
Yeah, so Gary, I mean, you're talking about housing growth and...
No, business growth.
Business
I mean,
growth?
You go out the path of Porter Drive, man, she's shocking.
Yep.
It's just like a
hive
of industry.
I think you are correct in a Hamilton context, but start to look at a Waikato context and how do we ensure that in a greater Waikato context that we can keep that growth going and that we can also, from a Waikato context, identify and work with the government to promote those opportunities where the benefit will also flow back into Hamilton. So that's the proposition.
Okay. All right, we're on to, it's been moved and seconded? Okay, yep. So we're on to speaking and Martin's first up.
Very good. Councillor O'Leary raised a really good point. It's very important that as part of that service level agreement, obviously we will expect an appropriate reporting process. My understanding is that they will primarily interact with
Martin, you're addressing the meeting, not questions. This is a speech.
I am on. This is debate.
Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
I'll look at you and not
Correct.
Blair. Looking at you, Mr Chair, only I would say that obviously the prime reporting will be to the Waikato Mayoral Forum. There will be some interaction with the Waikato Plan Management Group, the governance group, but that will be a secondary point in my view. I think just the clear thing we want is appropriate report back, appropriate KPIs. Also, I think picking up Councillor O'Leary's question, I think, is just to ensure that there's an opportunity from our Chief Executive from this building, not just the elected wing, is to put forward names of appropriate people that could actually make a really good contribution. I would also expect from this group to regularly sort of be in touch, if need be, with our mayor relevant chairs in terms of, you mentioned the Shane Jones Regional Development Fund, so that we've actually got our ducks in the row so we know what they're doing and what we're doing, and that's really important. And after 3 years, we will be scrutinising those KPIs. Thank you.
Thanks, Angela. Thanks. I should have invited you to speak first.
Okay. I'm happy to support this, and thanks for finally getting us some information that I can actually sink my teeth into and get a bit of an understanding. This will be the ninth reiteration of a type of economic development agency in the history of the city. The recent failings, and I have a very old report here, the past failings are around the fact that it was Hamilton-centric, and the powerhouse is the region. For a small cost of $140,000 annually is something that could deliver huge benefits as long as the business plan is really focused and actually captures our unique regional proposition, because we might not be a unique metro city, but certainly as a region we are, and we have great economies of scale. So the success in this lies in the partnerships that we have in the region. My only word of caution is, and I've been consistent on this, is with the board. We have a huge region of 500,000 people with some incredible businesses that go under the radar and are unnoticed. I do not want to see on this board, and I say this with the greatest respect, the same faces that we have seen in the past. We need to capture the new businesses out there. There's some incredibly innovative entrepreneurs, of people in their millennial. I don't want to see that typical board makeup of the same faces where I will look down the list and I'll go, yeah, know that person, yes, know that person, yes, know that person. This is time to reach out and do something different. Priority Tauranga have done it incredibly well, and I think that they're the model of success, and we need to do as best we can to model that, as well as trying to be unique. So a fair bit of pressure on the staff. I'm really relying on the establishment board to do the right thing, and I'm relying on those mayors that sit on that governance appointment board to put together a really dynamic team of people.
Thanks. Mayor Andrew.
When our region prospers, the capital of the Waikato, Kirikiriroa, Hamilton prospers, and that's what this is all about. So it's not about money directly coming into Hamilton, it's about it spinning back in from the regions. And I strongly believe that middle-aged older businessmen and women are the ones with deep depth and experience, and they're the ones who are driving this, and I have a huge amount of faith in those people to drive this, take this forward, and bring central government money into our region in large quantities. Thank you.
Thanks. Gary. Oh, sorry, my apologies, Ryan. Yep, sorry.
That's right. Yeah, I just want to echo Councillor O'Leary's comments, and also Mayor King's, that this is a pretty massive opportunity. It has been done over and over again. I think that the board is aware of that, and I like to think that this time it will be different. And I just want to acknowledge through the chair, if I can look at you, Blair. I don't know if I'm allowed to look at you directly. The fantastic work that you do. I know a lot of it goes behind the scenes, and I code Blair as the Blair Witch projects. He's like Black Ops, making things happen that otherwise are off the grid. But in all seriousness isn't a word, is it?
Go with it, Stuart, go with it.
In all seriousness, then, I keep forgetting my point, but it's really good, so bear with me.
You've got plenty of time.
Oh, that's good. No, sorry, it was just to echo the point that came up this morning with Future Force. We've got this wonderful strategic voice, but I guess the danger is once it gets momentum that it doesn't go off and become its own personality. And I guess if we could maybe feed that back into the group. And like you say, you've got 11 key stakeholder councils to factor in, but we've got to move forward in congruency with these councils and as one voice. So I guess that needs to be almost part of the constitution of an organisation like this, where it does that as reflective as it can be of the whole conglomerate. Thank you.
Thanks. And Gary now.
Yeah, I don't support this. Basically, this is something set up, and Andrew said it, to try and, with our cap in hand, to get some money from someone else, and it's never from the private sector, it's some money from the government. Can we get some money from the regional authorities? Can we get someone else's money and we'll try and spend it here? I don't think that's a good business model. As far as I can see, a lot of what this thing will do is be able to remove building blocks that other private businesses have to deal with, and suddenly, because this thing will have contacts with local authority, there'll be some degree of favouritism for them. I think we'll start seeing a lot of subsidised businesses coming in. I think there's a possibility that this group may be able to avoid rules that others can't avoid. So I don't think it's based on a transparent business model. I mean, we've had Future Proof with mayoral forums, LAS, Waikato Plan. All these things fail in the end because they're all led by local authority. And some of them are actually really good private sector people, but they get their local authority hat on and they suddenly start losing all their their vision or something like that. I just can't see how this thing will improve what we should be doing if we want to improve the economic development within this region, reducing the regulation and the costs that we apply to private business, which is the biggest handbrake that we are applying to our economy and which is the major thing that's holding us back. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Mark.
Thank you. I will speak very briefly because I hope that we remember this conversation in a year when the report comes back. The kind of aspirational things that Councillor O'Leary was talking about, the modern people in there, the new wave, etc. If we see the same old faces, we will have what Gary fears, and that is just another institution. So I endorse that comment heartily. And for that, that was one of the reasons I remember when this first came up with Dallas and Richard coming in here. I said, look, can we please make sure we don't commit for the 3-year bulk sum, say goodbye to the money, that it is reported back every single year. So, that's the kind of question I do hope I remember to keep you on. How spunky is this thing? Because it is the most exciting opportunity we have to keep it new, keep it vibrant, and it's also exciting to be a part of the working with the Waikato in the economic development sense, not just so we can pool our resources and go and get some money, but we can pool our minds as well and think in a region with an economic slant. So go for it.
Thanks. Okay, did you want to write a reply, Angela?
Very short. I just wanted to reply to Councillor Mallett's speculation. No idea really what he was speculating about. I mean, the Waikato business group that was set up under the mayoral forum that started this project was everything local government isn't. And that is incredibly successful regional business players who have put their own resources and their own purse into this and will continue to drive an economic development agency, because not only, Councillor Mallett, do they have something to gain, but they also have a great deal to lose. So, yeah, I reject everything you said.
Okay. We'll go to the board for this. Thanks. For the motion or against? No. Thanks.
The motion is carried, 9-4 against.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving quickly along to the development contributions remission for Q3 from Stafford. Again today. Far away, thanks, Stafford.
Good afternoon, councillors. Good to be back again this afternoon, eh? Sorry. So I'd like to take the report as read. Just noting that we will be back on Thursday to discuss deliberations on the DC policy for next year. So if you've got any questions that you have in particular that should come back to deliberations, I recommend that you direct those to that report and saying that, are there any questions?
This was a report about specific remissions, so only about that, as Stafford said, not about the policy, which we're going to have a shot at soon. So, Angela, thanks.
Thanks, Stafford, for your report. Page 230.6, am I reading this correctly? 2 CBD remissions totalling 19,615 and an actual demand remission of 1 million. What does that mean?
Yes, that's correct. So if you go to the table, attachment 1, on page 232, you can see that there is one very big remission for a village. It's not unusual that retirement villages get a very large remission. The way that they get assessed lends themselves to be lower demand. Generally, the traffic data suggests that people who are in retirement villages maybe don't go driving as much, can't use the reserves and etc. So basically every large retirement village that gets developed in Hamilton will have a large remission like this. That's not to say we're giving them the money, it just means from the model charge they get it reassessed at a lower rate.
Yeah, the 2 CBD remissions there for London Street and Ward Street, is that 19,600 remission, is that under the current CBD remissions policy?
Correct.
And what, only if you know off the top of your head, what is the value of both of those developments, commercial?
Oh, I don't have that
know.
information.
Okay. All right, that's all right. Thank you.
Thanks. Stafford, this may be more a question to the infrastructure GM, but when we look at remissions for retirement villages, and you mentioned they might have lower costs and transport cited, what about the costs of providing pedestrian crossings, signalised pedestrian crossings on the roads outside? So we actually have 2 at the moment doing that, and they're retrofits, and they're almost, we probably should have had them in to start with, and I'm not sure that maybe it's a different assessment we need to do of retirement villages' transport needs as opposed to others because of that sort of different transport stage of life situation.
I would have thought the time to deal with that is in terms of assessing the application and the effects of the application.
So was that included in the assessment of this one?
Look, I can't answer that one. I don't know specifically. I know we've got one coming up in Peacocks, and I guess that'll be part of our assessment there. Yeah. So I'd have to go and check.
Certainly, in terms of pedestrian crossings and bus stops, we've had pretty frequent demands for retrofitting, which makes me say we're not doing neither us nor the village suppliers are doing the transport assessment fully to start with. So we're letting them develop out some of those facilities in place, and then the ratepayers are having to pay for that when perhaps, and they, at the same time, as Stafford says, they're frequently getting large remissions. Maybe that's not accurate according to the needs that they cause.
Look, I agree with the sentiment. Like it's an immediate vicinity stuff you're talking about, isn't it? Right outside the gate or the boundary, and it should be in the assessment of effects when we're dealing with the proposal. So I'd have to go and check.
Can I ask that your group with Stafford's looks at that, how that's handled?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
If we could make a minute note of that, if that's all right.
Are they retirement villages coming to Hamilton? We further increase costs.
Yeah. There's, as Chris said, there's another one coming up. I'm not trying to affect this one, just the policy for that. Okay, any other questions? If not, I'll move the recommendation that we receive the report, seconded by James. Those in favour, hands up. Against, carried, done. Okay, and I'll move the resolution to exclude the public, seconded by Leo. He got in before you did, sorry, Siggy. Those in favour, for the reasons outlined, those in favour, against, carried.